just the opposite.
High fly ball, deep left field. Oh, 27, does it again.
Gone. Fernando Tatis Jr. with a two-run shot has the Padres on the board.
Go. That's his 11th home run. Driven out to deep center field. Going back, Springer turning, looking, see ya. Oh, what a shot by Judge. The Yankees lead 1-0.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode number 39 of Free Baseball, hosted by me and Jake Crumpler. I know you see a couple new guys here right now. One old guy, one new guy. Got Isaiah Hansen pops in every now and then to talk about this guy we're going to talk about first. But before we get to that, we'd like to introduce Martin Wingfield. He's used to write for the Athletes Hub. He's come back recently. Going to be here on the show to potentially talk some Red Sox. But going on, first thing. Isaiah Hansen there sitting there pretending to read that book all about Jeter. Talk about Yankees signing Aaron Judge to a 9-year.
Some player.
Yeah, so a 9-year, $360 million contract. He was a Giant for like all of 7 minutes. Thanks, John Heyman. Aaron Judge, the big thing yesterday on Twitter. We were all going crazy about, but you know. Let's get Isaiah off this mute and hear him rant about Aaron Judge before we move on.
Let me turn off that celebration music 1 second. Okay. Look, it was a stressful couple of months. Actually, for me, it's been stressful since the spring training because when Aaron Judge, the contracts got leaked early on, and I really saw that he took that personally. And then you see him go off during the season. Every home run for me, I don't know if you remember early on, I'm like, every single home run, it feels like he's further and further away from us because someone's going to pay him. I don't know if we would tie up $1 billion over the next 10 years on 3 players over the age of 30. I wasn't sure, and 2 of them being very injury prone in Judge and Giancarlo. But, you know, I see a bunch of Yankee fans and group chats and all these things. They're trying to ruin the moment for me. They're talking about, oh, you know, by the time he's 36, by the time he's 35, he's going to be, you know, Mr. Irrelevant, or he's going to fall off this major, you know, this 6'7" height that he's going to fall off somehow. And listen, let me just tell you, it's time to live in the moment and just enjoy it, okay? Because imagine, for the Yankee fans, not maybe for us here, the feeling of Aaron Judge entering Yankee Stadium on opening day in a San Francisco Giant uniform. That would have been the darkest day in my time as a Yankee fan, simply put. And I was ready for it. I was preparing, but it would have been a dark time because the George Steinbrenner days are gone. We're not the same Yankees. The Mets, I believe, as it stands right now, and I'm pretty sure we'll get to it later, I believe they have a higher payroll than we do. Maybe not after this signing, but they definitely were, or they will. And I expect them to for many years. Now, we need to do more. Okay, this is not it. Like I'm celebrating, but I'm not celebrating like going crazy yet because I need to see some more rules. If we could get Carlos Rondon and you guys talk me into it, then I'll feel a lot better. But you know what? Aaron Judge is still a New York Yankee. Martin, you could go ahead and hit that mute button if you want. I'm going to go ahead and be toxic for a little bit because I'm not a toxic Yankee fan. I don't complain. Look, I see all these group chats. So this is my chance to be toxic and not to rub it into Jake's face because you guys still have a chance to get an Aaron Judge. And, you know, in all fairness, he could really set the world on fire if he is to sign it. But aside from that, I'm happy. I'll think about what happens at the end of the deal when the end of the deal gets here. The Astros lost Justin Verlander. It was a good weekend. Or was it a weekend? It was my weekend.
Yeah, I would definitely have to say it was a roller coaster of emotions for myself. As you mentioned, John Heyman tweeted out that Arson Judge was close to signing with the Giants, and that, like you said, all the fire puns were great. I mean, that tweet's going to go down in history in the annals of Twitter weirdness. And John Heyman, yeah, he pulled a Bob Nightingale while Bob was asleep or something. But yeah. I really thought it was this close to happening. They pulled the rug right from out from under us, and then just signed him the next morning. That was awful news for me to wake up to. Not the way I wanted to start my day. I really thought we were getting our guy, and I felt when the Giants signed somebody we'll talk about later, Mitch Haniger, I felt like it was getting close to that point where it felt like a consolation prize, and that we wouldn't be getting the man we thought we were getting, and I was right on that one. But I think Judge rightfully deserves to stay in New York. I think he's got that personality that's bigger than life guy that fits really well there, and he doesn't seem bothered by the fans or anything out there. It would have been great to bring him home. He's from Sacramento, so that would have been really cool to have him out here in the Bay, especially because we haven't hit 30 home. We haven't had a player hit 30 home runs since Barry Bonds. So it's been quite a while since we had a home run hitter like he is. But yeah, I don't think I can be too upset. I think the Giants are going to come through with some cheating factory stuff and really pull something out of the ground to make up for it. But let's hope they give those dollars that they would have spent elsewhere on some other guys.
Yeah, Haniger will probably hit 30 bombs. It's important to note that Aaron Judge turned down more money to stay in New York. Reports are that the Padres offered him, I think it was these are 9 or 10 years, $410 million. So he specifically chose the Yankees. So if you're a Yankees fan, be grateful. At the same time, he will be 40 years old and the contract's over. But, a lot of this money is going to be offset, especially towards the back end of that contract, by the fact that he printed money for the Yankees. This was pointed out by David Cohn. He printed money for the Yankees basically while they paid him absolutely nothing. The Yankees owner is kind of a penny pinching bastard, for lack of a better word. Their payroll currently, Isaiah, if you wanted to point out, is just a little bit lower than the Mets. The Mets currently are sitting at about 225. The Yankees are about 210. So $15 million off, but the Yankees needed to make this move. I think if they didn't get Judge, they were in a bit of a bind. And then I think once you get to that situation, like Cashman did everything in his power to keep Judge, obviously airing out the money numbers to try to pressure Aaron Judge, which sucked. John Heyman, though, completely blew it on this. With
it was great.
Yes, he did.
With that, yeah, that was pretty enjoyable on my end to see John Heyman goof up like that. But it does suck for all the Giants fans and all fans of hating the Yankees. So it is what it is. Moving on.
Well, speaking of hating the Yankees, I want to hear what a Red Sox fan like Martin has to say.
Yeah, I hate this move. I hate it because I don't want to. I hate playing them every year, but I get why you Yankees fans are mad because it is a long-term deal. It is $360 million, but like I said, you got to live with the moment. And this man he hit so many homers last year, and he deserves that money. Yes, it was an overpay, but somebody else would give it to him.
I really quick. Somebody put it this way early on. I was one of the non-toxic Yankee fans. They said, let's just look at it as back pay for the past, I don't want to say 6 years because he was hurt for a lot of it, but all the years that he has been providing. And like you said, on and off the field, he's picked up this franchise, put it on his back, and has given us a reason to still say, yeah, we're still the Yankees. Like, this is still a tradition. We still have another Yankee great now. So let's hope, we'll see what happens moving forward. But
I feel that he should be captain in the next few days.
He has to.
I saw a report. They already announced that.
Once that contract is signed, I expect him in the next 24, 74 hours to be named captain.
Yes.
Yeah. Fair point. This is the third largest contract in the history of Major League Baseball, and he's also got the third highest AAV at $40 million. That'll be behind Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, two old guys on the Mets. New York handing out the money.
I like that.
Two old guys indeed. Some more awards news since we covered that in the last show. Relievers of the year have been announced in the American League. I think it's the Mariano Rivera American League Reliever of the Year was handed out to Cleveland Guardians Emmanuel Clase. I want to say we mentioned him on the pod where we talked about Edwin Diaz, because didn't Clase get was it him that got a weird MVP vote or something like that?
I can't recall. There were so many weird people that got down ballot MVP votes. I can't remember.
Clase though.
Yeah, but Clase, I mean, obviously he's by far and away the best reliever in the American League. I think he posted a sub-2 ERA and an insane amount of strikeouts or something like that.
1.36 ERA. He's not a big strikeout guy, but yeah, he was amazing. 42 saves.
42 saves there. And then on the other side, we do have a big strikeout guy. So it's Trevor. I think it's a Trevor Hoffman award, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trevor Hoffman, NL Reliever of the Year, is obviously Edwin Diaz, the trumpet man in New York. Had one of the best relief pitching seasons of all time, so it's going to be hard not to give it to him there.
They both deserve it.
Yeah, definitely. They were both incredible. Diaz a little bit better than Clase, but I think it was very clear who was going to win each of these awards. So there's not much to cover, especially because we've talked about Edwin Diaz extensively this offseason thus far, after he re-signed with the Mets and has won other awards already. So I'll just leave the floor open to anybody else if they have anything to say about these two flamethrowers.
Real quick, I want to say I got to admit something. If you look at my search history on YouTube, maybe about
how you're going to say something.
No.
Look, incognito mode is a thing. Now listen, every 2 weeks you will see me searching up Edwin Diaz walk-up intro. It is just so fun to watch, even as somebody that despises the Mets. In fact, it's not that I hate the Mets more than I hate the Red Sox. It's just the fans are all surrounding me. So for me to give the Mets any type of goodwill is a big thing. Edwin Diaz is fun to watch. And, of course, Emmanuel Clase as well. So deserved. He deserves his money, and he deserves the award. That's for sure.
Important to remember that Emmanuel Clase also probably a recipient of one of the biggest fleeces in trade history by the Cleveland Guardians, because they traded an old beaten down Corey Kluber who hardly ever pitched for the Rangers for now Mariano Rivera, Reliever of the Year award winner. So moving on, we got off-season transactions to talk about. So many transactions, winter meetings completely underway. Before we get to the ones that have happened since winter meetings have started, the Rays, big spenders in free agency, always, every year, coming out, and they handed out their largest contract in franchise history to Zach Eflin. I know.
That's such a funny sentence.
Former Philly, Zach Eflin gets a 3-year, $40 million contract from the notoriously penny pinching organization that is the Tampa Bay Rays. It's weird that 3 years, $40 million is their largest contract in franchise history. But yeah, I mean, they get their guy, Zach Eflin. What are your thoughts immediately on this one, Jake?
I don't know what's weirder, is the fact that a $40 million contract is the largest in franchise history, or that they gave it to Zach Eflin. It's so weird. And I want to write an article about this so bad. I don't know which website it'll be for, or if it's already been done at Pitcher List, then I'll do it for Athletes Hub. But I really want to dive in to why the Rays did what they did. They always seem to know what they're doing. They know something we don't, but I don't know. There's just something about you look at his numbers and he's not incredible. He's really good at limiting walks. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys. So it's like a 5% walk rate, a 20% strikeout rate, nothing special. He's never been able to stay healthy too well. His career high in innings is 163, and he's only been over 100 twice. He's only been over 100 innings 3 times in his 7-year career. So it's not like he's an innings eater, which is you could expect that from the Rays, wanting some guy who is going to be able to eat up some innings with that young rotation out there. But elsewhere, it's he gets a pretty decent amount of ground balls, and he limits hard contact pretty well. So his expected stats on StatCast are pretty good, like xWOBA and xERA are in the top 35 among starters. But other than that, it's not like his repertoire is that incredible. His sinker is pretty solid. It's got a 31.6% CSW, which is 28th among sinker ballers, and his curveball is really good, but it's really inconsistent. It's like I've read enough about Zach Eflin throughout the years that when he has his starts, he decides in the bullpen, like while he's warming up, whether or not he knows he's going to have his curveball and if he's going to use it. Like if he's like, oh, I've got the feel for it today, I'm going to use it. And then it's really good. It gets a lot of swinging strikes, but he doesn't use it all the time because sometimes he just doesn't have it. So maybe the Rays have a game plan of how to get him to consistently get the best results out of that curveball while also mixing up the rest of his repertoire, because he uses a sinker and a four-seamer 55% of the time. So maybe if he can turn more to that curveball cutter slider combo, and he's even got a changeup that he throws sometimes, then he can have more success. But this is a guy that has a career 4.49 ERA in 660 innings pitched. So, and it's not like with a lot of strikeouts either. It's a 19.7% career strikeout rate. So there's not much there. They probably see something there that we don't see, and I'd like to dive into that more. That was sort of the rudimentary deep dive I just did on the spot right there for Eflin. But yes, that's crazy that it's the largest in franchise history. While everybody else talks, I'll look into what the previous record was.
A couple quick notes that I have immediately noticed about the Zach Eflin trade that I wanted to talk about. And it's more along the lines of what Jake had to say about the Rays. It's obviously an organization that gets the most out of their players. They're a lot like the Giants, especially with pitchers. Zach Eflin, you talked about his curveball, and you talked about a big thing is like if he has it, if he doesn't. The Rays are one of the biggest organizations in all of baseball in terms of maximizing curve spin rate out of their starters. You can look at like guys like Shane Baz. He has a hammer curveball, especially dudes that didn't play baseball last year, like Tyler Glasnow. Tyler Glasnow is one of the nastiest curveballs in all of baseball when he's on. Shane McClanahan's big curveball guy. I believe Patino also throws a curveball, and I want to say Yanni Chirinos does too. So a lot of guys that they have, especially in their rotation, they really maximize guys that do throw that curveball. And if they can get Zach Eflin to actually, not falter on his, because he ranks in the lower end of the percentile on curve spin rate. I think he's in the 33rd, 34th percent. Just looking at Savant really quick. While a lot of the guys that play for the Rays sit in the 70 or above, like McClanahan, I think is 72nd. Glasnow previously was like really, really high. Zach Eflin, there's a chance they could really turn him into the innings eater that they really desire, because a lot of their starters end up just going 5 and they try to ride their pin. It's a move that if they get it to work, they can kind of and get Zach Eflin to stay healthy. They really need somebody like that will fill that role, that'll help save their pen, because they are more of a pitching and defense team. They're not like a big power slugging kind of team. I think it is a weird move because it's Zach Eflin and largest contract. You just don't expect those two, like that person and that phrase to go together. Just doesn't make any sense. But I think the Rays know what they're doing. Zach Eflin really he kind of underperformed his expected stats. He had 4.4 ERA or 4.04 ERA, not a 4.4, but he had a 3.27 xERA. I think he had a really low FIP compared to what his ERA was. Yeah, 3.56 with 3.81 xFIP. So he kind of got hosed a little bit, and that's kind of a product of playing for one of the worst defensive teams in all of baseball, which is the Phillies. So hopefully the Rays can get the most out of Zach Eflin. Would love to see him succeed.
Yeah, it definitely feels strategic. I think that's what they're going for, because you just mentioned Tyler Glasnow coming back. You got Shane McClanahan. Yeah, if you could get an innings eater, and look, as someone that actually owned Zach Eflin in fantasy baseball, this is where fantasy baseball really shows its value, because I was on a game-to-game basis. I felt confident with relying on him a little bit, even though I knew there was a chance he could blow up. So in other words, just inconsistent. But if he could find some consistency, you have a solid third rotation guy. Yeah, I mean, 3 years, $40 million sounds right. It's just weird that it's coming from Tampa Bay. So,
yeah. Also important to remember that Zach Eflin is still a very young free agent. He will be entering his age 29 season, and they only gave him a 3-year deal. So if he just kind of implodes and gets blown up, it's 3 years. It's not that much money for the Rays to eat. But he's a young guy that they're probably banking on. Well, if we don't get him right this year, we got next year, third year, maybe be a wash, but we'll see.
I think it's a decent move. Like, it's $40 million is the biggest contract in the Rays history. I'm surprised that that it's only $40 million. Like, how do you it's weird, but like, as you said, this is an okay move. If he get him, he gets curveball to be good. You get him good, then he's a good rotation, kind of like bottom rotation. Then if he's gonna be some innings, then it's a good signing.
Yeah, it's the largest by $10 million as well. The previous record was Charlie Morton at 2 years and $30 million. That was in 2019. So it's they're really breaking out of their shell right in here, spending the big bucks.
Absolutely. Gigantic dollar dues spent by the Rays here. So congratulations on their marquee signing. Staying in the AL East, the Red Sox added to their bullpen, which they desperately needed to do, and they signed Coldplay lead singer Chris Martin.
No way. I love Coldplay.
I love Coldplay. They signed him 2 years, $17.5 million. He had a pretty solid season last year, especially after he got traded.
I'd like to hear what Martin has to say about Chris Martin.
It's a decent signing. Like last year, our bullpen was awful. So to get this guy, it's a 2-year deal. It's decent. Not our best signing of the offseason so far because of the pitching, but I'll give him that. It's an improvement. We need to do more, but I'll get more of that later.
Yeah, you guys definitely backed up this signing later on in the offseason. But I've always liked Chris Martin. He's known for not walking a lot of guys, and I am a big fan of walk to strikeout rate, both in terms of pitching and hitting. And with relievers, it's really a good indicator of somebody that will have a lot of success. So this is a guy who's always been able to limit the free pass. And last year he pitched for Davis's Cubs and then got traded to my arch nemesis Dodgers. And I think he was really unlucky with the Cubs. He had a 4.31 ERA and a 2.08 xFIP. And then everything turned around with the Dodgers. He walked guys never 1.1% with the Dodgers and struck out 37% of batters, which is absolutely insane. He had a 1.46 ERA across 24 2/3 innings, and that came with a 1.92 xFIP. So he was really he was very deserving of that success. So I think there's a lot to like about him. The only thing that's somewhat scary is that he's going to be 37 next year. So you'll have him for his age 37 and 38 seasons. We'll see how that works. I wouldn't say this is a guy who's the pinnacle of health or anything, but I think there's lots of potential in this arm. And with the other reinforcements the Red Sox have made, they might actually have a pretty decent bullpen this year.
Yeah,
absolutely. Anything you want to add, Isaiah?
Not pretty much in agreement. You need these kind of guys in the bullpen as long as he can stay healthy. And I know we'll talk about another signing they made later on, but yeah, the Red Sox might actually have a decent bullpen for them, and that's been a struggle for them for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, well, Chris Martin will join a cast of pretty decent relievers that they have towards the back end. A lot of them have not been too great, but they have salvaged guys like John Schreiber, Tanner Houck, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Houck, and Joely Rodriguez, who they acquired from the Mets. So they have a couple decent guys in there. We'll talk about another one that they added later. But yeah, obviously fixing the bullpen was a big issue that the Red Sox have tried to fix. Moving on to my favorite baseball team, of course, the Milwaukee Brewers traded Colton Wong to the Seattle Mariners in exchange for Jesse Winker, old friend from the NL Central, Jesse Winker, and Abraham Toro, who they acquired last season from the Houston Astros. The Mariners also received a little bit of cash in the deal. They get about $1.75 million in this trade. And this was kind of a head scratcher for me, but Jake was one that really talked up Colton Wong. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to him.
Yeah, I've always liked Colton Wong. I think he's really good in many aspects. Obviously, from a fantasy perspective, he's got that power speed combo that I think is really underrated because he never really plays a full season. He's usually around 115 to 130 games, but he's always like a 15-15 guy, and he's added a lot more power in the past couple of years, even as the ball has died down. But where he really gets most of his value is from his glove. He's one of the best fielding second basemen in all of baseball, even if he is getting a little older and probably slowing down a little bit. I think he's still just an incredible fielder over there at second base, and that's where he gets a lot of his value from. But also he's got a really great eye. He walks around 9% of the time and strikes out just like 17% of the time. So that's really good. He puts the ball in play, and that's always important. But I think just his ability to field really well and also provide power, speed, and on-base ability is very underrated. I think people see this trade and they see Colton Wong for Jesse Winker plus somebody else, and they're like, wow, the Mariners got fleeced. But in reality, I think if you're just looking at the hitting stats, then yes, that's where you're going to find that. But Jesse Winker is absolutely one of the worst outfielders in all of baseball. I remember when this trade went down and we were talking about Rowdy Tellez, I compared Jesse Winker to if Rowdy Tellez was playing in the outfield, because he is that bad. I think I had his stats up earlier when I was looking that up, but I can pull them up really quick. But it's he's really bad in the outfield, but he does make up for it with his bat. It's hard to tell though if it's because of his time playing in Cincinnati, which is really kind to left-handed hitters. He was a really incredible hitter, especially in 2021 with the Reds when he had a 147 WRC plus. But this past year, in his first year in Seattle, he had a 108 WRC plus. He batted just 219. He's always been a guy that also has really good plate discipline and doesn't strike out too much and has some power, but it's hard to tell if his true talent level is on the Seattle side or on the Cincinnati side or somewhere in between. But he is dragged down by his glove, which produced outs above average -10 last year and -16 defensive runs saved.
Is that good?
I think not. I don't think so. I don't think it's that good.
That sucks.
So yeah, he's a really bad fielder, which is will probably force him into the DH role in Milwaukee, which is fine. I think that park's a lot nicer, and he'll actually get more games in Cincinnati playing in the NL Central. But outside of that, Abraham Toro is pretty mediocre. I think he batted 185 last year, 62 WRC plus. He's a guy that can play all over the infield.
-1 WAR.
Yeah. So I don't know. People are like, oh, well, like Toro's got so much control. He's only going to be 26. And I'm like, yeah, but is he even good? That's the real question. Yep. So we'll see if the Brewers can get something out of Winker and Toro. I think Toro is fine in the field, and I think Winker has a pretty solid bat, but I think Wong is going to be super reliable for the Mariners as long as they can keep him healthy.
And then if you're the Mariners, it's kind of worth the gamble, right? Because you look at Adam Frazier's year last year, but he batted like 238, 3 homers. I mean,
free agent too.
Yeah. So it's not like they were expecting him to be their savior, but you're the Mariners and you're on the verge of. I think the Mariners. Last year I predicted them to go much further into playoffs. I'm going to hold to it this year. I expect the Mariners to be a threat in short order. Not that Colton Wong makes. I'm not saying that don't get twisted, but you need to make a move like this. So.
Yeah, I'm airing on. I originally, when we talked about this trade in like the group chat, I originally aired more on the side of like, what are the Mariners doing getting rid of a bat like Winker? Toro, I kind of like, he has control, but he sucks. So like, what's it matter? At the same time, the more and more that I've looked at this move, I absolutely love this for the Mariners, just because this helps out their rotation so much. Colton Wong is obviously, he's a perennial Gold Glove candidate at second base, and now you're pairing him in the middle infield with JP Crawford. Like, that is one of the best defensive middle infields in baseball. And they have guys that are high ground ball guys like Marco Gonzalez, who are your inning leaders. And they also have the rest of their rotation outside of like Castillo and Ray.
Is disgusting.
Yeah, that rotation is nasty.
Really
if you look at their rotation, it's Robbie Ray, Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, and then your 5 is Marco Gonzalez. So you are helping out a young, already good rotation.
Not a terrible bullpen either.
No, they have a good bullpen. So this move just helps out all their pitching staff so much. I really, really like this for the Mariners. Winker, he has a chance to go back to being what he was, but he's a DH type now. I think he's so bad in the field that, especially with the Brewers too. I mean, they already trot out a bunch of bums out there, like in the field. Like, if you're choosing between Jesse Winker or Christian Yelich to play in the outfield, I think you have some different problems. At least on the fielding territory, because neither of those guys are very good. But yeah, I really, really like this move for the Mariners on further inspection.
Yeah, I like to go for Seattle as well. Wong is a pretty good fielder, and Winker, I mean, he's a good hitter, but as Jake said, he's not that good of a fielder. So with how Seattle is, I'm taking the fielding over hitting right now. And Wong he gives you that.
Great point.
Is it just me? But like, I'm looking at the Mariners like roster now, like complete, and you got Teoscar Hernandez also, who I
I forgot about that.
Like Kelenic, I hope he takes a step forward, and you got Julio Rodriguez. Like this is a dangerous team next year, and like it might not be done, but like they got everything. They have offense. They have, you just mentioned, defense. They have a good bullpen, and they have an elite starting pitching staff. The Mariners are going to be a problem next year.
And it's a young team as well. They're not that old.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah. Really, really like this move for the Mariners. Let's stay in the AL West. How about it? A bit of a smaller signing, nothing too major. Just Jacob deGrom signing with the Texas Rangers for 5 years, $185 million. There is a 6-year conditional option, so buckle in because there's a lot of words. Okay, so if Jacob deGrom undergoes Tommy John surgery or suffers any elbow or shoulder injury that leads to a 130 or more day IL stint within a season or a full calendar year absence over multiple campaigns, which is important because deGrom has been consistently injured, a $20 million club option would kick in. Okay, if it would be a $30 million club option if he posts a top 5 finish in Cy Young at any point, or he tallies a cumulative 625 innings pitched over the next 5 seasons. Now, if he pitches over 725 innings or more, or secures 3 top 5 Cy Young finishes, which is very possible because it's Jacob deGrom, it will be a $37 million club option for Jacob deGrom. Now, if he doesn't have that kind of energy or that injury, it would trigger the conditional provision. He could vest, however, an option in 2028 at $37 million by pitching 160 or more innings in 2027 and getting a top 5 Cy Young finish. So the contract could then go all the way up from $185 million to $222 million, which is very significant for a pitcher in the Rangers that seem to be really selling out to go all in. And it's I love the move for the Rangers still. I know deGrom has the injury history, but you have to bet on someone like deGrom. I think if you're the Mets, I understand not wanting to vest that much money into deGrom, basically knowing that your team is already kind of maxing it out. But the Rangers desperately need to try to win. I mean, they obviously spent all that money on Simeon, Seager. They have a couple young guys that are really talented and controllable, like Nathaniel Lowe. They want to try to get to the point where they're going to compete. It just is a shame that they play in the AL West, which is getting more competitive by the year. But deGrom obviously has parlayed his immense amount of success into a long-term contract with the Texas Rangers.
I think that's the type of contract you have to give deGrom at this point, because if you're going to get him, you have to pay him, but you also have to protect yourself because it's fairly possible that who knows how. I mean, I don't even want to wish because I want to see him pitch, but who knows how many games he plays. Let's just put it that way. So I like the protection for them, and I think it gives him a little, I don't want to say extra motivation because, it's not him wanting to get hurt, but it's a good deal all around, I think, for both parties. So.
It'll definitely be interesting. I think everybody knows the exploits of Jacob deGrom over the past few years and how unstoppable he is when he takes the mound. But outside of that, I think, like you said, it's going to be if he can take the mound. That's going to be the biggest question surrounding him. I don't think there's any question surrounding his abilities anymore. This is going to be in the latter half of his 30s, which we know for some of the really great talents on the mound, it doesn't really matter. Like for the likes of Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, guys like that, it doesn't really matter how old they are. They just continue to pump out innings and continue to be successful. So it'll be interesting. Like that won't necessarily hold back DeGrom, but it is interesting that after so many years of 200 innings pitched, 3 straight years from 2017 to 2019, he's been unable to stay healthy. And now it's going into the latter half of his career where it's like, can you really rely on him being healthy? But this is definitely a move the Rangers had to make if they wanted to be competitive. We've already talked about how incredible the Mariners are. The Astros just won the freaking World Series. So it's going to be hard to compete there, especially with the Angels also looking like obviously they're going to want to compete. They have freaking Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. So they're really going to have to improve this next year, and Jacob deGrom will hopefully help that because they just signed Semien and Seager last year for a lot of money. So that lineup is sort of coming together. They already put a lot of money into the lineup, and the rotation was really lacking last year. They sort of had maybe 2 pitchers, like in general, they had like 2 pitchers on their team. It was like Martin Perez and John Gray. John Gray was injured for half the year. Martin Perez was an all-star. So now they're able to bring both of those guys back and add Jacob deGrom and add Andrew Heaney, who we'll talk about later. And then they also have a bunch of young guys that can sort of round out the back end of that rotation with Jake Odorizzi. So now it's sort of looking like they have a really strong starting group that before was completely lacking. So I think that's really important. And now you just get the edges of the roster looking good, clean up the edges, and starting to look like a playoff team. But it's really going to be a tough battle out there in the West.
Absolutely. I think the success of Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer has honestly probably helped DeGrom into getting this contract where he can be like, look, I know I've been hurt the last two, 3 seasons, but like, look at how it did before. And now look at how these older guys are performing. Because he's obviously, what is he, 32, 33? I think he's 34, actually.
DeGrom?
He's 34.
35 next year.
He's 34 now. He'll be going into his 30 year. He'll be going into his age 35 season.
Wow.
So he'll be 40 or 41 years old by the time
that option year is his age 41 season.
He's going to yeah, but the Rangers are also the Nolan Ryan franchise, and he pitched till he was like 74. So DeGrom will probably get it done too. But yeah, I like what the Rangers have done. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Another pitching move before winter meetings. This is the Orioles signing Kyle Gibson. The Orioles really a sneaky team last year, outperformed a lot of expectations, which nobody had any of them. So, I mean, they almost made the playoffs. They were right in the thick of it till the end. They signed Kyle Gibson, who just like Jacob deGrom, had a couple pretty good seasons in Texas. Parlayed that.
Do not compare Kyle Gibson to Jacob.
Same guy, man. He had the one good year and he got traded, and then he just kind of got blown up because the Phillies had absolutely no defense. He had a 5.05 ERA last year, but he had a 4.28 FIP, which is a lot better and more indicative of the fact that he plays in a small ballpark with the literal worst fielding team in all of baseball. Orioles need to add to that rotation because it is not good. John Means was hurt pretty much all of last year as well. So they needed to bolster it somehow. It's a 1-year, $10 million deal. Other than that, I don't know what else there is to say. Hopefully they can get him to perform. Maybe if they're not in the thick of things again next year, they can trade him for something at the deadline. We'll see.
Yeah, both of these moves were really good. I mean, first DeGrom, the Rangers needed that. They need a guy like him. And honestly, yes, I know he has his injury history, but it's worth it. It's Jacob deGrom. He is an elite pitcher. He is an ace. And for a team that wants to win now, they have to have him. And for Kyle Gibson, I think it's a good move for the Orioles. He's a decent guy. He's a decent starter.
I think the biggest thing for Gibson, like you said, is the park. Moving into Baltimore, which has now become an elite pitcher's park, which used to be a launching pad for hitters, is now a really great spot for a pitcher to land. And the Orioles have a really young rotation right now. Every single guy outside of Gibson is under the age of 30, and most of them are under the age of 27. So he'll be the veteran there. He'll technically be the ace. He might even be the opening day starter, which is pretty incredible. But they don't have the strongest rotation, but this is a team that looked pretty competitive last year and could actually compete for a playoff spot this year. So that'll be interesting. But Kyle Gibson, he gets somewhat ground balls, but I'm sure he could benefit from that left field in Baltimore. But outside of that, it's not a super inspiring signing, like as an Orioles fan, I don't think I would be like, oh yes, let's go. We got
Kyle
Kyle Gibson. We are set.
It's a
Yeah.
decent
You're
signing, but
Kyle Gibson.
Now, if you were a Tampa Bay fan, maybe, right?
it's a decent signing, but it's nothing to be excited about.
I think it's trade bait, like Davis alluded to. Like, I think, you hope he does well enough, you flip him for something else. And on his side, it gives him a chance to be like, to show that he's better than what he showed last year. And I think that's all there is to it, to be honest.
They also just desperately needed to bolster their rotation because that rotation outside of John Means is like a bunch of guys that sound like they're made up.
Gibson kind of fits right in.
Well,
John Means is still going to be covering from Tommy John surgery.
Yeah, so they need somebody that can throw a baseball, or unless they want to roll out Austin Voth all the time. And I don't think anybody in the national, like, or in Major League Baseball really wants to be doing that. So, yeah.
I could throw a pretty mean cutter. I'm not gonna lie. So, it's all for my services.
Go to Baltimore and see if they'll let you
Yes.
pitch for them. But yeah, moving on. Before we get to some more transactions, there's actual baseball news to talk about. About the past. There's obviously contemporary baseball era players committee has elected Fred McGriff, the crime dog, to the Hall of Fame. Player well deserving of being in. So instead of talking about right now guys they didn't vote in, I think we ought to give Fred McGriff his due. Fred McGriff obviously is very deserving Hall of Famer, had a long career in Major League Baseball for several different teams because it feels like he played for basically everybody. Most of his success coming with the Atlanta Braves, but also he's a former Chicago Cub, so I got to talk about him. I love that guy.
For 1 year.
Yeah, well, he played for everybody. Jake, what are you talking about?
He's the one that got away as a Yankee fan because they traded him, I believe, when he was still in the farm, and he went on to have a Hall of Fame. Now I could say a Hall of Fame career. You got to give it to him.
You really do.
Yeah, this is one of those guys that you look at his stats and you think he's in the Hall of Fame, and then you realize that people really care about those round numbers. This man hit 493 home runs, meaning 7 shy of 500. There are no player that has no links to PEDs that has 500 home runs that's not in the Hall of Fame. I'm pretty sure about that. So I think if he had hit 7 more home runs, he would have gotten in his first try. So this is very deserving because he's right there. He's 500 home run hitter. That's like an automatic lock into the Hall of Fame. This guy is obviously not known for doing any performance enhancing drugs. He started his career in the 80s, but he hit a billion home runs, and then outside of that was just a really professional hitter. He walked a lot. He did not strike out a lot. He had a 284 career average, a 134 WRC plus, and he was a 57 F4 player. So I think all around he's very deserving. He is a first baseman, so that probably put a lot of pressure on his offense, and that's sort of probably why he missed out on being elected his first time around, because if he's coming up just short of that 500 home runs and he's like pretty solid elsewhere but not standing out in any single statistic. I think his career hit total was 2490, so just about 2500 there too. That it really relied on his bat, but I think, like I said, he's very deserving. He's just one of the best home run hitters of the last few decades. Playing right before Barry Bonds and the rest of the guys started, laying waste to the home run records. But Fred McGriff is very deserving, and it's cool to see him get in. But yeah, like Davis sort of alluded to, it's disappointing that some of the other guys that were up for the Contemporary Baseball Era Players Committee ballot did not get in. I feel like if we get started talking about it, we might never get off of it, though.
We won't.
Yeah, we'll talk about that at a later date. How about that?
I'll be there.
Yeah. But anybody else want to add anything about the crime dog before we get moving on?
I'm good.
Sounds good to me. All right. So this next one for me means a lot. The winner of the Ford C. Frick Award for 2023 is Chicago Cubs radio broadcaster Pat Hughes, who, if you have not heard his World Series win call, it is one of the greatest calls in professional sports history. He's one of the most recognizable radio voices for any baseball team. He's been covering the Cubs since 1996, which is the year I was born. So Pat Hughes deservingly is going to be enshrined in Cooperstown. He just deserves the world. Just thrilled to see this. He's been basically a cornerstone of radio broadcasting, which I still listen to the radio calls. Like if I'm at work or in the past, like I try to listen to the Cubs games on the radio whenever I can, or just listen to that broadcast. But he's basically like, he is Wrigley Field at this point. Like he's the corner of Clark and Addison. If you listen to the Cubs, like you're listening to Pat Hughes. So really, really glad he gets his due and he's going to be in Cooperstown. I know you guys don't really listen to any Cubs radio broadcast, but he's the GOAT. So
hey, you said 96 till now, all of the things he had to endure with covering the Cubs for
exactly
that long.
Anyone should get there just because of that. But yeah, so congratulations to Pat Hughes, the GOAT radio broadcaster of all time. So how about we cover some All-MLB teams? We talked about, I think we did our predictions, didn't we, Jake?
No, we didn't because we ran out of time.
That's right.
I have my predictions written down, but I don't think it's worth it. I don't know if it's worth it to compare them. These are voted on by the commissioner's office as well as the fans and stuff. So there's it's like all-star voting at the end of the year. I don't think there's much to talk about. We've talked about all these guys all throughout the season as well as after the season when different guys were in the running for MVP awards and that kind of stuff. But I think it's interesting to read out the names. So for the first team, we've got JT Realmuto at catcher, Paul Goldschmidt, NL MVP at first, Jose Altuve at second, Manny Machado at third base, Trey Turner at short, and then the outfield is Mookie Betts, Aaron Judge, and Mike Trout. Designated hitter is Yordan Alvarez. The starting rotation is Sandy Alcantara, Alek Manoah, Shohei Ohtani, Framber Valdez, and Justin Verlander. And the bullpen is Emmanuel Clase and Edwin Diaz. Does anybody have any comments about the first team? I think it looks pretty good to me.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, no debates.
Okay. Second team, it'll be the same format, but these are the guys that made the All-MLB second team. We've got catcher Will Smith, the catcher one on the Dodgers, not the actor or the relief pitcher. Yes, there you go. First base, we got Freddie Freeman. Second base, Andres Jimenez. Third base, Nolan Arenado. Shortstop, Francisco Lindor. In the outfield, we've got Julio Rodriguez, Kyle Schwarber, and Kyle Tucker. At DH, we've got Shohei Ohtani. And in the rotation, we've got Dylan Cease, Max Fried, Aaron Nola, Max Scherzer, and Julio Urias. And in the bullpen, Ryan Helsley and Ryan Presley. My only comment about this, outside of Carlos Rodon sort of being snubbed, is Shohei Ohtani made both the first and second team.
That's why I shook my head when you said it. I'm like,
yeah.
Could
He
we
made both.
just give this guy like
Just give the first team.
Yeah, I don't know what like we already give him his flowers. Like, can we give him like what's the next thing? Flowers. Like, get the dude some chocolate. Get the dude some like. Shohei Ohtani is just amazing, dude. And also shout out to Francisco Lindor after having a rough inaugural season with the Mets. He's bounced back and he's a threat again all of a sudden. So
very fair points.
Yeah, one more to add in there. I think this is really good that Ryan Presley got his due. He's quietly been like outside of those two names, like on the first team, Clase and obviously Edwin Diaz. He was still a top 5 relief pitcher, and just it feels like nobody ever talked about Ryan Presley being good. So glad, even though he plays for the Astros, glad he kind of got his due here.
Yeah.
So last few days. Really hectic. Winter meetings underway. All sorts of stuff to talk about.
All thing to me, free agency does not start into winter meetings.
It feels that way. You know, when your big names that you're talking about outside of DeGrom are like Zach Eflin. Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, winter meetings started. I think this one, the first move that happened, caught absolutely nobody by surprise, and it was the Dodgers re-signing Clayton Kershaw to a 1-year, $20 million deal. Kershaw is one of probably the top 2, if not one, like greatest pitcher of the last generation, and he's still obviously really, really good. Dodgers legend future Hall of Famer signed for another year in Los Angeles.
Yeah. At this point, he's just gonna stay there until he retires.
If anything, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The only shocking thing is maybe that it wasn't a multi-year deal, and maybe for like a little bit more money. But aside from that, he'll be back again next year too, and the following year. So until he decides to retire, even though I did kind of think there would be some consideration for Texas, but aside from that, the Dodgers, obviously, yes.
Yep.
I think the reason he's only getting 1-year deals is so that he doesn't have any pressure to play another season. Like, he's done everything to make it in the Hall of Fame. He's won the World Series as well, even if it's got an asterisk on it. I think he's done everything he has wanted to accomplish in his career. So right now he doesn't want any pressure on him to have to continue playing after each year. So we take it year by year. And right now I think the Dodgers are more than happy to just give him $20 million every single time he decides to put on the cleats again. But yeah, I mean, not only was this not surprising to see him re-sign with the Dodgers because it's happened all of the past few years, but also because it was reported like 3 weeks ago that they were getting close to signing him. And then they were just, I thought it was official already, or I thought it was done. I don't know what was going on. And then they're like, Clayton Kershaw officially signed with the Dodgers. And I was like, what happened the last few weeks where it was still
that's
deciding?
How casual it is. It's just like, hey, I'm going to stop by when I can. When I see you, I see you.
Yeah.
So
I'm in the area. Should I come sign the contract?
It's like, not now. I'm eating dinner. Come next week.
Clayton Kershaw. I don't know about you guys. I know Jake probably doesn't like him. Please plays for the Dodgers, but he's one of my favorite baseball players.
No, one of my least favorite.
I love Kershaw. Kershaw, this will be his 16th season with the Dodgers. Important milestones to look for this season from Clayton Kershaw. He is now 3 wins away from 200 for his career. Might not get there depending on how many innings he throws. He's kind of been injury prone the last 2, but he's 193 strikeouts away from that 3,000 mark. He's already a future Hall of Famer, but he's going to get there. Also important to note, Clayton Kershaw and Jacob deGrom are both 34, but Clayton Kershaw, it feels like, is like 4 times older than Jacob deGrom. And if you think that, it's because he's probably thrown a full baseball career of Jacob deGrom. He's literally 1,200 innings thrown more than deGrom. deGrom's got about 1,320 for his career. Clayton Kershaw's thrown 2,581. So he's literally almost thrown 2 deGrom careers already. He's just a legend of the game. He's going to get all these accolades, and I think Jake's spot on. They're giving him the 1-year deals, and I don't think it's because he's like, I'm going to give it 1 more year, then I'm going to go to Texas. I honestly think he's just about done playing baseball. I think he's probably got maybe 2-3 years left, and he's just going to be like, I'm done with this, and retire before he's 40. But yeah, Clayton Kershaw, hometown discount for the Dodgers too, because he's still good.
Yeah.
Next one.
Another old pitcher. Mets signed a pitcher, but it wasn't deGrom, so we already talked about that. They signed Justin Verlander for 2 years, $86.66 million for a fossilized Justin Verlander.
Fossilized?
He just won
the Cy Young.
Bro, he's like 75. Their rotation is so old now, but this... Verlander, obviously, he's still good. Just won the Cy Young, as I have just been lambasted for. You guys, just don't let me finish. Just don't let me get there. 1.75 ERA the previous season, wins the Cy Young, parlays that into an absolute ton of money for virtually a 40-year-old pitcher. Unheard of.
Yeah, I love this move with the Mets because, that's David Grom, the pre-pin right there. And honestly, I like this move better than signing deGrom because with the injury history, and yes, I know that deGrom is younger than Verlander, but Verlander has proven that he has been more healthier than deGrom over the past few years, honestly. And to me, I'd rather give a guy 2 years, $86.6 million with Verlander than 5 years of what Texas gave deGrom. Because the Verlander is going to give you great innings. He's going to be a great starting pitcher. He is one of the best in the league, and he's still one of the best. And with Scherzer there, That's a great 1-2 punch right there.
Yeah. And I think about it from the perspective of like you get to the playoffs. You know, you don't know if Jacob deGrom is going to be there. Okay.
Yeah, you know.
To be fair, you don't know if Max Scherzer or at this point Justin Verlander would be there either. But you have two guys with experience in the postseason. They could easily win you back-to-back games in any playoff series. The Mets will be a very dominant first-round team next year. And then they'll fall, obviously before they hit to the second round. But I mean, and it gives you a chance to reset in a couple of years and see what else is out there in free agency. So I like it. I mean, it's a high salary, but whatever. It's Steve Cohen. He's got money. He's fine.
Yeah, it's not my money. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I think like everyone said, it's a great deal. I would have loved to see Verlander, Scherzer, and DeGrom in the same rotation. I think Steve Cohen would have as well. That would have been incredible. But to see Verlander and Scherzer reunited, they were teammates with the Tigers. Feels like a decade ago. It probably was a decade ago, but it's dope to see them back on the same team, especially at this age where both of them are still at the top of their game. And Verlander obviously is, I don't know, something else. Scherzer's incredible, but he's somewhat slowing down, both in terms of performance and ability to stay on the field. But Verlander just had Tommy John surgery and then had like the best season of his career. So I don't think there's much to read into other than, this is going to be one of the toughest 1-2 punches in the playoffs you could ever imagine to face. And there's no way that the Mets are done adding to the rotation and also to the lineup. I think they've got a long way to go, especially because they probably saved some money by not signing DeGrom, but this is one of the most interesting ones. I don't know. Did you read about the 3rd-year option, Davis?
From the rundown? No,
Yeah.
I did not. So you can go ahead and talk about the 3rd year.
Sure. Yeah. So he's also got an option for a 3rd year. If he records 140 innings pitched in 2024, he'll have a $35 million player option, which I'm sure he's almost guaranteed to exercise if he does reach that next season. That'll be really interesting. That would push the total deal up over $101 million, which is very incredible to get at such an advanced stage. I think he'll be 40 years old next year. No way. That's incredible.
Yeah, he's going to be 40 next year.
Yeah,
These contracts are starting to be much closer looking to like the NBA style contracts. So, you had like DeGrom is like a 5-year, like an NBA max contract if he gets that 5th year. And then you got the short-term deal, like the LeBron James style deal from Justin Verlander. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, important to note that the starting age of the two pitchers that Jake's talking about in this 1-2 punch next year combined is 78 years old. So they'll be
fair, you did say they're basically.
Yeah, they're paying both of them combined next year $86 million between the two of them, which is unreal because
the top two highest paid players in baseball.
Right. And then the Braves are going to be paying Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzie Albies, Travis d'Arnaud, Michael Harris, Spencer Strider, and more, $74 million.
You can go with that one. Keep going.
Also, my favorite bit about this, Justin Verlander will now play for every single team in baseball whose main colors are orange and blue.
Yeah.
He's hit the triple.
Smart. That was a good one.
Yeah, there you go. So
good. That's a good baseball stat.
Yes, it is.
All he has to do is just suit up for the Knicks, and this is it.
Yeah. He's going to go to the Knicks, and then he's going to go to the Islanders. So he
probably has to play for the Knicks.
Right. 3 years Knicks Islanders, and then he's going to be hitting for the cycle.
Yeah.
So staying in New York, this one was a bit of an underrated move. The Yankees signed Tommy Kahnle, returns to the Yankees for Tommy Kahnle. To add to their bullpen that they needed a little bit of help in. What are your thoughts on this triumphant return, Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, they still need more, but this is, again, like I said with the Red Sox signing Chris Martin earlier, this is the type of move you need to make, and he is a lefty specialist, right? And we do need that coming out of our bullpen. It looks like Chapman is long gone. I don't know if he's even going to find a team to play for this year. You also, let's see what happens. I'm a little concerned about our bullpen overall. So just because I don't know, I feel like I'm just used to being like so overpowered in the bullpen a little bit. or expecting there to be an overpowerment, and now it's just kind of like an average bullpen. So I'm glad that Canley's back. The money's fine, and he's fine. He was okay last time he was here with us. So if he can stay healthy, I'm happy.
I would not consider him a lefty specialist. He's a righty, but that's okay.
Well,
I just wanted to clarify that. I looked up his stats. He's better against righties, but he's good enough against lefties. But I don't think that's what they'll be using him for. But nonetheless, like they only have a couple other lefties in the bullpen with Wandy Peralta and Lucas Lutke. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell with Conley after he returned from Tommy John this past season. He only threw 12 innings with the Dodgers. And the biggest concern for me is his drop in velo. He was like topping out at like 98 before. And this year he topped out at like 96. He was averaging 95.6. And prior to the injury, he was averaging 97.6. So that's a 2 mile per hour drop off, which is very concerning for anybody, especially a reliever. And he didn't strike out as many guys as he used to, but maybe he just needs to get back into the groove of things. And I think maybe going back to his old stomping grounds will be able to help him in that department.
Absolutely.
It's an okay move. They need arms in that bullpen, and they have it on. So let's see what he does.
Oh, yeah. I think we're ready to move on to this next colossal move to talk about. The Athletics get their guy, Jace Peterson, for 2 years, amount unknown. It's probably
$12 million.
Probably $45. Jace Peterson, he's kind of a super utility, mainly an infielder. He's been playing his last few years with the Brewers. He's not really an excellent hitter. I think he had like a 97 OPS plus or something, which is not league average. He walks a lot though, and that's what the Athletics like.
Yep. My boys went out and got their man, the one of 2 additions that they made so far during the winter meetings. I think Peterson's sort of an underrated guy. He can play literally anywhere. I think he's played over the past 2 seasons. The only positions he hasn't played are center field and catcher, because he's actually pitched a few games as well. So he can really fill in everywhere, all over the field, infield and outfield. He's got some speed. He's combined for 22 steals across the last 2 seasons and can hit a few home runs as well. Like Davis said, he walks like 11% of the time, which is really good.
Over the past two seasons with the Brewers, it's 12.5% of the time.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. It was 12.5 in 2021, but 10.1 this past year. So there's no way it's still 12.5.
Oh yeah, the tweet I saw is wrong then. So thanks, fake information from Brewers Twitter. You're never good for anything, Milwaukee.
Yeah, so he's like a league average bat. He's been around like a 97 WRC plus over the past 2 seasons, and he was still worth 2.2 WAR last year in 113 games. So he's like a very average guy who can play all over the field. I think that's fine for an A's team that is going to be awful this next year, and he'll be able to play everywhere, let the young guys get on the field when they need to, but he doesn't have a noticeable platoon split, right? So they're not going to platoon him just against righties. He can play both against lefties and righties. So this is a guy that's going to be in the lineup every day. You're not going to know where he's going to be in the field, but it'll just allow everybody else to get their playing time while Jace Peterson sees a lot of time in there and isn't like bringing the team down at all.
As it currently stands, he is making like the vast majority of the payroll for the Oakland A's.
We don't even know how much is he getting paid.
I'd imagine it's probably like 5 or 6.
I don't think it's out yet. I haven't been able to find it, but
yep, pending a physical. Maybe he'll fail the physicals.
We'll get no one.
Nobody. Well, no, you guys got a guy later. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he walks. He actually is a really good fielder. He played a lot of third for the Brewers, and I think he posted like seven something outs above average at third. He's a really, really good fielder. So, and he walks. So the A's, they like those guys. Guys nobody's ever heard of, walk, field. That's it. Do you guys have anything to add about big free agent signing, Jace Peterson?
No, I think it was fine. It's like, it's like me when I go on MLB The Show and I'm trying to find like a utility guy and I look for the secondary positions and I see they can play everywhere. That's the guy I want on my team, gives me flexibility. And like you said, he may be their Zach Eflin of the offseason. So it's a nice little signing.
Oakland's not going to be that. It's going to be bad this year. So to get a guy like a utility guy like him, it's okay.
It's okay. That's history of the Oakland Athletics.
Major.
Come on, man. Don't kick them while they're down.
No, too bad. Next signing. Guardians add another switch hitter. They love those guys. They signed Josh Bell, who's probably the last big domino at first base, you'd have to imagine. 2 years, $33 million, got an opt-out after the first season. Josh Bell just adds to this lineup that needed a little bit more thump. And I really love this move for Josh Bell, and I love this for the Guardians, who I've kind of adopted as my second team. Really like this. Yeah, he posted 2 WAR last year, 17 dingers. Power kind of a little bit down, but he played a lot of his season as well for the really garbage Nationals, where he has no lineup protection outside of Juan Soto, and then he played in the cavern that is Petco Park. So if you get him to a hitter's park in the AL Central, where pitching is honestly not super great, because you're going to be playing the Tigers all the time. Yeah, I really like this move for Josh Bell, for this young Cleveland team that is trying to take the next step, because they were already really good and outperformed expectations last year. See how they do this year with this new addition.
They've always been a team that's known for producing really good pitching. So I think it's important for them to focus on improving the lineup. And that lineup is actually looking pretty dangerous now, not in a way that you would expect from, the juggernauts of baseball, but the Guardians are now running out Steven Kwan, Ahmed Rosario, Jose Ramirez, Josh Bell, Andres Jimenez, Josh Naylor as their top 6. And then the bottom 3, who cares? You can just throw out whoever out there, but that's a pretty solid top 6. And I think Josh Bell really rounds it out. And I think what fits the mold of the Guardians more so than Josh Bell's switch hitting nature is his eye. His plate discipline has always been really good and really underrated, because I think you think of a big guy like this who hits home runs. You don't you'd obviously think of him as maybe a guy who has good plate discipline, like he walks a lot, but maybe you would think that he also strikes out a lot. This is a guy that has, for his career, struck out only 18% of the time while walking 12% of the time. That's really incredible from a guy that has also produced a 37 home run season back in 2019 and then has shown power in each of the past 2 seasons as well. So I think he's really underrated in that department, and he fits the mold that they like out there in Cleveland, where you have like Steven Kwan, who is just elite in that department, and then also Jose Ramirez, who I've always admired for his ability to lay off pitches out of the zone. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Josh Bell has another massive season and opts out after this first season, because he'll be able to. But if he doesn't, then the Guardians actually have a pretty solid lineup to back up what could potentially be a division winning rotation and bullpen.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you somebody else other than J Ram who could pick up a big hit when you need it, and he slowed down a little bit, obviously, with the Padres, but I do expect him to do a lot better in this lineup. And J-Ram needs support. Okay, he needs support from everyone, not just in the lineup, but from everybody outside of the lineup and the fans as well. As we, I don't know if he's underrated anymore. At least he's not underrated by this show, but I'd like to see him get him help. So I'm good with it.
Yeah, I really like this move for Cleveland. They need a guy like Josh Bell in the lineup. And he's a good power hitter, and he can fit that lineup. And like I said, J-Ram needs support, and he's gonna get that. And Josh Bell in that lineup, it's a good sign for Cleveland.
Yeah, I actually love Cleveland's aggressiveness in the last 2 years. This has been a franchise that we've kind of dogged Dolans for refusing to spend. Their payroll in the last, not even the last full calendar year, has increased by over 30%, which sounds like a lot, even though they're still not spending all that much money. But they just handed out I think it's their biggest Oh God, I think it's like their biggest free agent signing since I want to say. Let's see. I want to say it's Edwin. Is it? I need to find it. I had it on the tip of my tongue. But it's a big free agent signing for them nonetheless, and they really needed to do this. But I mean, they extended the best closer in baseball, or not the best closer in baseball, the best closer in the AL, really, Emmanuel Clase. They won the Central. They extended Miles Straw.
It was Encarnacion.
Yeah,
by the way.
Encarnacion. Yeah,
3 years, $60 million.
Yep, and that's their biggest extension since then. So you can't really say they're anything other than all in. They're doing everything they can to make their team competitive. A lot of rumors are surrounding them trying to chase Sean Murphy, although I don't necessarily think they will, considering they already have kind of their top prospect that they're looking to bring in is Bo Naylor, who's a catcher. So they might still try to get Murphy, but I would expect them to still be pretty aggressive with more of these smaller moves. I don't think they're going to be really in play for Correa or one of the huge name free agents, but I could see them picking up a few more guys that make them a very competitive baseball team, or even more so, because they obviously just won the Central, so they're plenty competitive enough. But I really like this move for Cleveland.
Yep.
And moving on, Jake already touched on it too. The Rangers also signed Andrew Heaney, former Yankee legend Andrew Heaney. 2 years, $25 million. Incentives could in fact bring this deal to almost $40 million, $37 million. And I was a little wrong in my prediction for Heaney. I thought he was going to be a guy that sneakily got almost like a Tyone deal, which we'll talk about later. But Heaney actually ended up taking less money and less years to end up pitching closer to home because he's from Oklahoma and he's now going to be pitching for the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, hey, he might not be a Yankee legend, but he might be a Dodger legend because he pitched very well last year, and he's brought himself back to relevance. And he got the deal that maybe not the deal he was looking for, but he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He came a long way. He came a long way. So
I don't have much confidence in this deal, to be honest. I think the Dodgers are known for getting the most out of their players. They're in that tier of Rays, Astros, and Giants, just super analytically focused teams that know what to do with pitchers. And I think that's what they did with Heaney. If you look at the rest of Heaney's career, he is awful. He loves giving up home runs. He had one season in the previous 8 seasons before 2022 in which he had an ERA under 4. Every single year has been over 4. In 2021, he was at 5.83. That was the year he pitched for the Yankees as well. He has never been a guy that is known to be good. He had that one good season in 2015 with the Angels when he had a 3.49 ERA across 105 innings. And ever since then, I think, they've been chasing that high. I think this is a guy who's very, very average and maybe slightly below average. And the only way that he is able to make this deal pay off is if the Rangers are able to move that game plan that they had in LA over to Texas, because I think it had a lot to do with how the Dodgers used him, what type of pitch mix he deployed. He completely changed his curveball. He relied on a curveball throughout his career before this past season, where he switched to what it's identified as a slider. It's not a slider. It's a sweeper. It's
slurve.
They call it a sweeper. That's what the Dodgers like to call it. It has more horizontal movement, obviously, than the curveball. That's why it's identified as a slider. But that's the biggest difference for him. I think also, if I look back one season that he was throwing no, I thought he was throwing a sinker more often before. Oh, he used to throw a sinker as well. And now he went from sinker, curveball to 4-seam slider. So he's a completely different pitcher, but it's all reliant on the Rangers continuing that game plan. So I think that's going to be completely reliant on him. But this one season, this 72 inning sample is the biggest outlier in the entirety of his career, that it's hard to bank on the fact that the Rangers are going to be like, oh, this is like our number 4 guy right here. So I don't have too much confidence in him. We'll see. If he does have what he had in LA, then he's going to be really good. If he doesn't, he's going to be awful.
Yeah, the Mark Pryor effect is really, really real in Los Angeles. I don't know what they're paying him, but it isn't enough because he just fixes all these kind of unwanted, beaten down pitchers and turns them into very, very solid pitchers. It's important to also note that Heaney's contract is just the 2 years, and it's incentive laden, obviously, but it does have an opt out in the middle, so he can opt out after this year, become a free agent again.
Yeah, I don't like the Super Texas because look at Heaney's track record. He's not that good outside of LA. So I'm glad that they signed the ground because if it was just Heaney, it would have been that improvement of a rotation, honestly, because like you said, outside of LA, he's been awful, maybe average. So hopefully they can find something that LA found in him, but I doubt they will.
Yeah, I'm a little bit in agreement there. Speaking of a guy that needs to find some form back that I used to have, the Dodgers, the Cubs, my Chicago Cubs have signed Cody Bellinger, former NL MVP, 2019 NL MVP.
Lucky dog.
Cody Bellinger has signed with the Chicago Cubs. 1 year, $17.5 million, just a little bit less than what he was projected to make in arbitration. Yeah, I'm happy. I really like Bellinger. I'll let you guys talk about it first before I decide to gush all over this thing.
I mean, hey, the Cubs made 2 solid moves. You got Jameson Taillon, who I know a lot of people were like clowning. I don't know why, but there was a lot of clowning. And that, like, Jameson Taillon did pretty well last year for the Yankees. There was a lot of stretches where I want to say, I believe it was July or around like the All-Star break where he was just filthy. He was just reliable, and you didn't pay a ton of money to get him. If he could stay healthy, you have a pretty decent starting pitcher right there. And then you got Cody Bellinger, who, if we did lose Judge, I was kind of hoping that he would be the replacement, just because there is still, I don't know if it's like we're just it's illusion at this point, but I believe there's still upside there. I still think he can wake up, and you got him only for 1 year. So if it doesn't work out, then you say goodbye next year. So I think it's a really nice signing for both sides. It gives him a chance to prove himself, and it gives the Cubs something to watch.
It's a pretty good signing for the Cubs and for Bellinger. I mean, Bellinger this is a good signing for both teams, honestly, because Bellinger, he needs this 1 year deal to prove that he's back and he can be good all season long. And the Cubs, like I said, it's fun to watch. And honestly, I can see this going good both ways. If Bellinger can bounce back next year and get a larger contract next offseason.
Definitely. I think the most important thing to point out about Bellinger, outside of him being awful with the bat the past couple of years, is that he's not a one-dimensional player. This is not a guy that gets all of his value from his bat. He is a really great fielder, especially for a guy that came up as a first base prospect. He's now one of the better center fielders in all of baseball. And I think that's really testament to what kind of value he brings to the field, because even if he doesn't have the bat that he had in 2019 when he won the MVP award, or in 2017 when he won the Rookie of the Year award, he can make up for all of that by fielding incredibly well. And so, like, he's not like a nothing out there. He's not as good of a fielder as Kevin Kiermaier, but like, if he doesn't have that, he's still like basically Kevin Kiermaier, which has been one of the more valuable center fielders despite not being able to stay healthy and stuff. But what you're really banking on with Bellinger is that he does recapture that offensive form that saw him hit 47 home runs in 2019 and 39 in 2017. And like, even outside of that, he's basically a league average hitter. I think he's just, I don't know if it's probably a mental thing. I mean, obviously you look at him and you think he's a stoner or something. So like, it looks like a mental thing, and it's playing out. Yeah, it's playing out like a mental thing too, because it's like, if you look at his plate discipline metrics, they're all over the place. He's striking out more than he ever has and is walking less than he ever has. So he's being super aggressive. It's probably something to do with his swing. I would love to see him do so much better. I really wish he had gone to the Giants, even as a Dodgers guy. I think he would have done really well going through the cheating factory there, but I'm really excited to hear what Davis has to say about one of his new players.
Okay, so this was just the best. I like Bellinger, and to to preface why Bellinger is perfect signing for the Chicago Cubs, short term and probably not long term, because if he hits big, he's probably gone. But here's the thing. Cubs top prospect currently, Brennan Davis. He plays center. He feels a short-term need in center. He's obviously a Gold Glove level center fielder for a team that is very quickly becoming a pitching and defense team. He hit 19 home runs last year. He's obviously still I think he's still feeling the mental effects of getting hurt, like in the postseason. He just hasn't been the same hitter since he got hurt. But he also plays first base. He's done so in the past. I don't know if they'd push him there. Guess who the second best prospect in the Cubs system is? And guess what position he plays? It's Matt Mervis. He's a first baseman. So you have both your short-term needs filled with Cody Bellinger right there for your top prospects to plug them in. Cody Bellinger also adds to an outfield that featured a Gold Glover last year. Ian Happ won a Gold Glove, and he was an all-star. So you have a former NL MVP in center. You have a Gold Glove fielder in left. You have a potential Gold Glove level fielder in Seiya Suzuki. So your defense in the outfield is ridiculously good now. I also like the intent this says from the Chicago Cubs. And Cody Bellinger is a Scott Boras guy, and he heavily alluded to the Cubs being really willing to spend that money. He said, the offseason sounds a little bit different out there. They keep banging the tom-tom drums, which obviously is alluding to Tom Ricketts, the Chicago Cubs owner, being willing to spend, and he's done so by signing Cody Bellinger, who's probably one of the biggest prove-it reclamation projects that you could have out there in the free agency. You already talked a little bit about Tyone. We'll touch on that later. They're only going to be paying Tyone and Bellinger about $34.5 million this year. It's not that much money for two guys that are good at baseball, which the Chicago Cubs players definitely need. And one more before I get off my pulpit. Cody Bellinger has been spending all of the offseason so far training with Jackson Holliday and Matt Holliday. Guess who did so last offseason?
Matt Carpenter. And
guess what Matt Carpenter did? Completely
murdered baseballs
and completely revitalized his career. Also a left-handed hitter like Cody Bellinger. So potentially, you never know what could happen. Cody Bellinger has a chance to refine that form. And even if he doesn't, he's a Gold Glove level center fielder that you have for a year. So there's no harm, no foul. If he sucks, you get him out of there. If he's great, awesome. And the Cubs are bad, you can trade him and you have a insane trade chip at the deadline if he's good. Maybe even if he's great, you can try to re-sign him. He's also 27. I believe he's eligible for a qualifying offer if they keep him this year, or if they lose him after this year. So there's literally nothing bad about this deal from the Chicago Cubs. And even though he was basically just a league average hitter, he honestly felt like one of the prizes of the free agency. So this is a huge coup for the Chicago Cubs. Anything anyone want to add about my new favorite player, Cody Bellinger?
I think I'm so inspired by by you being inspired. I really do. You deserve something to watch.
I'm world's number one Cody Bellinger fan.
After all of the hell you guys have been through the past couple of years, you deserve something to watch.
Awesome. I think it's time for Jake to talk about his new favorite baseball player. The Giants. The Giants have signed Mitch Haniger to a 3-year, $43.5 million deal for I was going to say he's Mitchy Two Bags. That's Mitch Moreland. Yeah. Haniger spent a lot of his season last year injured. But yeah, he's obviously a very good baseball player. I'm going to hand the floor over to Jake so he can gush about his new favorite.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I mentioned it earlier. I alluded to this being somewhat of a consolation prize, and now it really feels like that. So it's somewhat disappointing to have him, especially when I wanted Bellinger as well. But I think I'm pretty excited about Haniger. He'll be 32, 33, and 34 across his 3-year, $43.5 million contract, which is not too much to pay for a guy that as recently as 2021 hit 39 home runs. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Judge that the Giants haven't had a guy hit 30 home runs since Barry Bonds. And Haniger just did it. Apparently, AT&T Park, Oracle Park now is actually a pretty solid place for right-handed hitters. If you look at park factors, they were like sneakily like the 6th best for right-handed hitters, which is very surprising to me as a Giants fan. But I'm really excited for this guy as long as he can stay healthy. That's the big asterisk there because not only has he not been able to stay healthy in his career outside of 2018 and 2021, he has not played more than 100 games in any other season, but also it's been freak injuries. The most notable one was him popping a nut. So we're going to protect his ball sack so as much as we can at all costs, because that's what's going to keep him in town. But yeah, he's a Bay Area native. He's from Mountain View, which is right by me, about an hour away. And I'm pretty excited to have him out here. We need outfielders for sure, and he's really going to make this lineup a lot better. I wouldn't call him a great fielder or anything. He doesn't provide any speed. He's more of a power guy. Like, he doesn't hit for a great average, and he doesn't have great plate discipline. So I think he's like a very average player in general, like around 2 to 3 WAR. But I think also he makes up for that by providing a lot of power. And so I think he's a slightly above average hitter and an average fielder. And maybe the Giants make him a lot better. That's the big caveat when it comes to the Giants bringing somebody in, is that they can take them to another level with their super deep coaching staff. You never know what's going to happen when somebody ends up there. Maybe Mitch Haniger turns into an MVP. Maybe he continues being Mitch Haniger and is just fine. But we needed outfielders, and at least we got one. And he's not going to be locked into a super long-term crazy deal like the Giants have done in the past with guys in their 30s.
Also, if this Yankees stay healthy, I like this move for the Giants. It gives them a good power bat in that lineup. And yes, his fielding not that great, but honestly, like Jake said, the Giants can definitely help him with his fielding. His coaching can really help him with his fielding, but we're really just bringing him in for his power right now. So if he can stay healthy, I think it's a decent move. I think it's a good move for the Giants if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, like I said in our chat, Alexa, Amazon Alexa, if you have a device, you ask her what her favorite player is, and she is going to say Mitch Haniger, and that they call him the Shed because he has all the tools in the box. That is exactly her analysis. So if nothing else, the Giants send Alexa into shambles because she's a Seattle Mariners fan. So there's that. And I think you would feel a lot better if it wasn't the shadow of what could have been. But Mitchell, he's a nice player, and there was a period where he was basically Arson or Matt Haniger for about a month or two last season. So, there's a chance that you feel a lot better mid-season about this deal, I think.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, I hope so for Mitch and the Giants. I think there was a lot of rumblings. I'm not sure if it was which one reported it. I think it was Rosenthal that said that they still wanted to land 2 outfielders even if they don't get Judge. So there's a strong chance they could be after one of the other guys, like maybe Conforto, maybe Brandon Nimmo, Mitch Haniger. Also kind of fits a weird little subsect of players that the Giants have acquired that are all like NorCal natives. So thanks to Danny Vietti for this, but they now have Mitch Haniger, Brandon Crawford, Jock Peterson, Logan Webb, Sam Long, JD Davis, and Willie Calhoun. All of them are from NorCal. So they got a bunch of NorCal guys out on their team. And Mitch Haniger adds to that long list. But he's a good guy. Especially he's got a lot of gap power. I think his career high was like 38 doubles or something like that 1 year in Seattle. And big outfield there, San Francisco, to rope some doubles, potentially turn them into triples alley. Ready to move on, Jake? You want to talk about Mitch Haniger more?
No, let's move on. I will hopefully be able to talk about his MVP season next year.
I hope so. The Philadelphia Phillies have signed pitcher Taijuan Walker to a 4-year, $72 million deal. Taijuan Walker had a very quietly good season last year as well, and gets to stay in the NL East. Moving just from the Mets to the Phillies. Phillies really trying to stay competitive and add to their rotation, which they kind of really needed to. And Taijuan Walker, I think, is a pretty big prize for them to get.
I'm not super inspired by this deal. I like Taijuan Walker as a person. I think he had a lot of potential when he was younger. He's now going into his age 30 season, and I think we sort of know what he is. He's a guy that relies on a splitter, one of the most inconsistent pitches that you could rely on as one of your most important secondary pitches. And I don't know, he's just like an underwhelming pitcher. He does not strike out a lot of guys, around 20%. He's very Zach Eflin-esque, except he walks more guys than Zach Eflin. He doesn't throw as many innings. I think he's just like a really solid middle of the rotation guy that doesn't really have too much potential left in his arm, but he'll like be there and be all right, which I think is fine for a team that has Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola atop the rotation, that you just need some guy out there who's going to take the ball every fifth day. But yeah, I'm not super inspired by this deal at all, but it'll be interesting to see, if he does somehow uncover some next gear, which I just don't expect.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be a next gear. But if he could keep a similar not a negative gear, then you have something at least at the end of the rotation. Now, I mean, when I think about this deal, in the Phillies, I just wonder next season. Well, we know we got Nola for next year, but I'm talking about the following season. If you could keep Nola, and this deal doesn't look too bad, but if he ends up being like your second pitcher in your rotation, then you're not doing too well.
Yeah. Honestly, this is not the biggest signing, but to me, this is a decent signing. Bottom of the rotation guy. He could definitely, he'll definitely be good at the bottom of the rotation. And honestly, for $70 million, that's not bad for Taijuan Walker. And as he said, he hasn't been super great the past few years, but for someone at the bottom of the rotation, that's pretty. He is a pretty good guy for a bottom of the rotation guy.
Yeah, it's crazy that he got 4 years, $72 million. Pitchers are really getting that bank this year.
That's what I mean. Yeah, so it's like one of those things. Like maybe a couple years ago, you'd be like, man, they overpaid, but now it's like, okay, like I guess a bargain. I don't know, like.
Yeah, I would still expect the Phillies to add to the rotation. Their projected starting rotation, according to MLB.com, was Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, and then after that, you have Bailey Falter and Christopher Sanchez, which are both still in the minors.
Walker.
Still, yeah. So Taijuan Walker probably fits in as the 4 there now, and then they're probably going to have to sign a 5-starter. But yeah, he had a decent season last year, but I don't know how sustainable it is.
Yeah, I just don't know about the 4 years. That's what
yeah, the 4 years is a little much, but they probably did have to give a little bit of an overpay to try to fix this rotation because they really need to balance out the back of it.
I mean, they just made the World Series. So I don't know if there's much to fix.
Yeah, that's true. And they also added a guy you guys may have heard of.
I almost forgot this one. I literally just had this in the rundown. I don't know why I didn't retweet it.
I was going to mention it to you. I'm like, did we talk about this last show or whatever?
That's what I was checking.
But no, the Phillies signed Trey Turner, one of the big 4 shortstops. Potentially, you could make an argument he's probably the best one of the 4.
Definitely.
For Trey Turner. But they signed Trey Turner to an 11-year, $300 million deal as a full no-trade clause, and it's going to see him reunite with Bryce Harper, former Nationals teammate. Yeah, I mean, this is just insane. Really huge move for the Phillies, and I love it. I love it for the Phillies. Love it for Trey Turner too.
Yeah, the Phillies they need to give him the years and the COVID period limit, but for someone like Trey Turner, it's well deserved because the Phillies need a guy like him in the infield that is a really good hitter. That's good defensively, and honestly, at 11 years, William, I think that's a good deal for them. And for the team that doesn't have that many holes, they just made the World Series last year. Hopefully, Trey Turner can get them that extra up that they need to get the World Series title.
It's a pretty crazy deal. Go ahead, Isaiah.
No, yeah, real quick. Because last year, I did my free agent predictions a year off, and I actually had Trey Turner going to the Giants. I thought the Giants were going to go after Aaron Judge, and I thought that their consolation prize would have wound up being Trey Turner. With Brandon Crawford, I think you have him for 1 more year. But instead, he turns to Philly's main prize of the offseason, and I tell you what, like you just said, they were a World Series team last year. So now you just add Trey Turner to the equation so casually. And he's the type of player you want in the playoffs that can do pretty much everything next to Bryce Harper. So I really like the deal. Is it an overpay? No, because nowadays everything's in quote unquote overpay. And I think by the end of his contract, someone mentioned something about Aaron Judge's contract. He probably won't even be the highest paid at the end of his contract, So that's just where these salaries are going. So well deserved, and good for the Phillies.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to note that Trey Turner is sort of underrated. I think people don't see him as like a top 10 player in MLB, a top 10 position player maybe. But he really is. He is so underrated. This guy bats freaking like 320 every single year, which by itself would be pretty incredible. And then he also is one of the fastest guys in all of baseball, stealing 30 bases every year. That by itself is like Ichiro Suzuki, right? Batting 300 with 30 steals is pretty incredible. And he plays a premium position at shortstop, but then he also provides very good power. 21 home runs this past year and 28 the year before that. This is a perennial 30-30 candidate and who bats over 300 every single season. And he used to deal with injuries a lot. And the past few years, he has been healthy. Outside of missing around 30 games in 2019, he's been completely healthy since 2018, which is great to see. I think he is very underrated in terms of not being regarded as one of the best players in all of baseball when he really is. And he's shown it for many years. I think the fact that he dealt with injuries early on in his career and he seemed like a guy that had a lot of potential rather than a guy who was really good. And I don't think he's grown out of that phase. In reality, he has, but I think in the minds of baseball fans, I don't think he's grown out of that phase of like a guy who has a lot of potential, but now he's going into his age 30 season. He's already shown us that he's incredible. And I think right now, this is quietly a guy that has a shot at the Hall of Fame if he can continue this trajectory into and throughout his 30s. Because I don't know, batting, like I said, 300 and stealing that many bases and hitting 20 home runs while playing shortstop is going to get you places. He's posted over 6 FWAR in each of the past 2 seasons, which is very elite. And I think he is very underrated. So 11 years, 300 million, I think is well worth the money for Trey Turner. And it'll be really interesting to see how good the Phillies can be once they have Bryce Harper back. You can't forget that he did just have surgery. Was it Tommy John surgery? He's going to miss like the first half of the season. It was Tommy John surgery. So the lineup won't be at full strength until the second half. But once we hit the playoffs, like we did this year, they are going to have the best lineup in all of baseball. By my book, once Bryce Harper is back in there, it's just going to be incredible with Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Rhys Hoskins, JT Realmuto, Castellanos, Bohm, Harper, Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh. That sounds pretty unstoppable. And we just saw them make the World Series, like we've said, and to upgrade that much at the shortstop position is something else.
Right. So with Trey Turner, especially what you've gotten now with the Phillies, not only have you improved the lineup, you've improved your middle infield defense because now they're going to likely shift Bryson Stott over to play second to accommodate him in the lineup, which is going to be a lot better than their opening day middle infield, which does anybody remember who that was?
Gene Segura.
Gene Segura and Didi Gregorius. Do you know how much money they made combined?
40.
12, right?
They made $30 million, $30.2 million. Do you know what the opening day midfield or middle infield for the Phillies in 2023 is going to make? $27.7 million. So you have an infield that's a lot better defensively and offensively that is cheaper. It's also important for Phillies owners' wallet because now Trey Turner, you've added this big chunk of money onto it, but it's also important to remember if you're still got, for whatever reason, in the back of your mind, the Bryce Harper money, I know he got the gigantic contract when it came out. He has 9, if you compare it to Aaron Judge's contract now, Aaron Judge has 9 years, $360 million. Bryce Harper has 9 years, $222 million left on his contract. That's a lot cheaper.
Steal.
Yeah, so now you have that steal of a contract because guess what? Bryce Harper's top 5 hitter in baseball when he's playing. Now you have Trey Turner, who's insanely underrated, and especially in the last few years, he's kind of hit a power surge because he's been playing and his power numbers are going up. But then last year, I think he almost hit 30 home runs, like 28, 29.
28 in 2021.
Yeah, so you add Trey Turner, who adds speed to the top of your lineup. He's obviously better than Gene Segura, and he's obviously better than Didi Gregorius. Don't kid yourself.
Hey.
Those guys are neither of them are good baseball players. Trey Turner is a lot better than both. And Bryson Stott, you get to move him to second, where he's still going to play elite defense, and maybe the bat will come along. This move for Philly is so perfect. Like, it's everything that Philly could have wanted to try to fix their miserable defense and add to their lineup at the same time. This was like, if you could have planned it out exactly how it should have worked for Philly, this is how it would go.
Listen, I'm not going to accept any Didi Gregorius slander. Okay.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
I'm not going to accept it.
Awful.
He's had some big moments for us, and he was he's a great artist. He could draw.
Maybe 10 years ago he did, but he sucks at baseball now.
He is Sir Didi Gregorius. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Listen, Bryson Stott,
United at Burger King, where he now works, probably, but
he will find his way. Maybe he might sign with the Cubs. Who knows? He'll find a way to.
I'd be upset. I would rather not have bad baseball players play.
I would be watching the Cubs.
I agree.
Opening day, I'll be watching the Chicago Cubs if that happens.
Yeah, I would rather not have players that are awful at baseball play for the team that I support. So I really hope they do not sign.
Yeah, let's get him back on the Yankees.
Yeah,
that would be great.
They need a shortstop.
I mean, no, but
wow.
I mean, hey,
Isaiah's a hypocrite.
Listen,
doesn't want to
you take Josh Donaldson off our hands, and maybe I take Didi at third.
No,
yeah, you
Didi can play
Josh
next
Donaldson.
to Josh.
Yeah. Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, he can just play next to Josh, and they'll be best friends.
Oh no,
maybe he can teach Josh Donaldson how to draw or whatever he does.
Fair, Donaldson may benefit from that relationship.
He might draw. Maybe Didi draws. I hope he draws better than he plays baseball.
Oh my goodness, Didi, where you at, man? He has great tweets.
I just said he's probably working at Burger King. You called him Sir Didi. It's probably McGrath.
He's the one person watching our podcast right now.
Love you, man.
And now he's gone.
Bye, Didi Gregorius. On to another Phillies move. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Martin, about Trey? No.
Yeah, I think what I said. It's just a good move.
Awesome. Phillies added to their bullpen too, adding Matt Strahm, who's kind of leaned out of being the swingman. He kind of played as a swingman for a little bit for the Padres, but now he's shifted more into like an actual relief pitching role. But they signed Matt Strahm, who he's decent. He's decent. He's a left-handed arm in the bullpen. Nothing too major. Spent last season with Boston, and they're absolute dumpster fire of a team last year. So,
whoa.
We're not good. They're not
He's
good.
not wrong. He's not wrong. We were that good last year.
So, Martin, what do you think of Matt Strahm? Do you have any inside info on him?
He was okay last year, but I feel he'll probably be better in a winning scenario with Philly.
Yeah, it's looking like he's going to round out the bullpen. I don't think he's going to be one of the top guys, but I think that's always been the Phillies' weakness is their bullpen, and they've still got Sir Anthony out there. They have a better left-handed reliever in Jose Alvarado, so Matt Strahm will sort of be that second guy, but I think he's pretty underrated, especially in terms of how he pitched last year. He struck out 27% of batters. He's a lefty. There's not too many lefty relievers, especially on the free agent market. He pitched to a sub-3 ERA. I think there's lots to like about him. And I just think it's interesting that it was 2 years, $15 million. I guess that's how much relievers are going for these days, $7 million a year for like a mid reliever. But I don't know. It should be interesting. I don't think he gets any saves next year, but I think people probably would have said the same about Tanner Houck before last year. So, I mean, it's up for grabs. We'll see. I mean, why did I say Tanner Houck? We're talking about the Phillies. I don't think anybody would have said the same about David Robertson. He was on the Cubs last year. I did say Sir Anthony Dominguez would take over the closer role, so I was right about that in the preseason. But yeah, I don't think Matt Strahm is going to be pushing anybody for saves.
He will be remembered as the third major signing of the Phillies offseason. He had Trey Turner, Michael Walker, and Matt Strahm.
Matt Strahm has 80 great hair. I don't know.
I was just
if
going to
guys-
say that, man. You need
Yeah,
somebody.
he has 80 grade hair with the long mane. He also had an uptick in fastball velocity last year too. He kind of has fluctuated a little bit, but he started his career around 94.5, and then it's just gone steadily down, or like fluctuated between like 93, 91. And then now it's gone back up to kind of like 94, close to 95. And you've seen an uptick in his put away percent and usage on his fastball. So maybe he's trusting his fastball a little more, got a little bit more velocity, doing better there. And hopefully he'll be good for the Phillies bullpen, because their bullpen almost consistently, it feels like we joke about it every single time that we do the podcast in the offseason, that their bullpen sucks. I think we called it a graveyard last year. So
where relievers go to die.
Yeah, where relievers go to die. So hopefully he won't go there and die with his absolute excellent mane. So moving on to another left-handed pitcher that plays for a team in the National League. Love these segues. I'm doing really good at it. Yeah, Jameson Taillon. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Jameson Taillon, formerly of the New York Yankees, now signed with the Chicago Cubs. And this contract is for 4 years. It's worth $68 million. And Isaiah, you watched Jameson Taillon last year. I will let you go talk about him really quick.
Yeah, like I briefly said earlier, there were stretches where he was the Yankees' most reliable pitcher, and you were happy to see that he was going to be under the mound, and he's delivered. He had some blow-ups where he didn't look so good, but 4 years, $68 million. He rebounded from Tommy John surgery, I believe it was, that he had with Pittsburgh, right? He had a rough first season with the Yankees, but he was adjusting. And as you guys always mention, it's in New York. So, you gotta it takes some time. He finally found his footing last year, and he looked really good. I think the Cubs got a pretty decent value there. 4 years, $68 million. Is he going to be your ace? Well, he might, right? He might be.
No, not better. He's not better than Stroman.
He might be your ace. So
no, he genuinely, I don't think he will. The Cubs never really typically have an ace.
No.
He
won't be the typical ace, but
no. I don't think he'll be a 2 or 3 with the Cubs.
Yeah, and I think that's a solid signing. And in fact, if the Phillies would have gotten Jameson Taillon for that kind of, they paid more for Taijuan Walker. So the Cubs made out really well this offseason, and then I think Taillon will be a nice addition.
You mentioned Taijuan Walker, and I think Taillon is incredibly similar to Taijuan Walker. I was researching their stats, and I looked at it, and I was like, wow, yeah, Taillon's pretty underwhelming. And then I scrolled up, and I was like, oh, wait, I'm looking at Taijuan Walker. They're very similar, both in the terms of the fact that they are pretty mediocre in terms of how they've pitched the last few years, but also in terms of the fact that they don't strike anybody out. Taijuan Walker was at 20.7% last year, just about what Taijuan Walker was. So I think if he continues to pitch at the level that he's pitched at the past 2 years, I think he's going to be pretty meh. I think he's got the ability to eat innings, which is important for a young team, a young up and coming team like the Cubs. But also, I think he does have more potential than Taijuan Walker. I think we've sort of seen Taijuan Walker's career play out, but with Taillon, I think it's interesting because, like you said, he missed some time with Tommy John surgery. He had cancer earlier in his career. He's missed a lot of time. I think he's sort of in that, it's like that DeGrom versus Kershaw, where it's like Taillon has not really shown everything that he can do, and he's sort of beginning the middle part of his career where Taijuan Walker has sort of already played that out. And I think the potential comes in the fact that Taillon has a really weird pitch mix that was being deployed in New York. It's like he would use a different set of pitches versus righties and versus lefties. I think he went 4-seamer slider versus righties and then curveball sinker versus lefties. And if you can sort of figure that out and do it in a more efficient way that helps him get both of those guys, both righties and lefties out, and also ticks up his strikeout rate, I think that's important. He combined to throw 47% of fastballs last year. So if he can stick to one of his breaking pitches and maybe improve it slightly and use that against both righties and lefties, I think that'll be really important. I think he's spreading his repertoire out too much, and he sort of needs to focus on 2 or 3 pitches, and he could be really good. But I think even if he stays at what he is, he's going to be, that middle of rotation pitcher, which is like good for a young team like this that just needs somebody to eat innings and be there.
And I think it's important, just real quick, just to look at the stretches that he was on, though. Because, like I said, last year he was coming off the Tommy John and adjusting in New York, and it's not easy to do that. And then he had some blow-ups. He had quite a bit of blow-ups, like 3 or 4 or 5 really bad blow-ups where he gave up 5 or 6 runs.
It's because he throws so many strikes. He doesn't walk anybody.
Yeah, but then there's other times where it's like he just goes on like a month straight giving up 2 runs or less. I believe he had a streak going at one point for us. So I think if he can harness the good that's there, like it's going to be a bargain, I think. But yeah, if he doesn't, if he just keeps on this same trajectory, then yeah, it's just going to be a meh deal. So
yeah, I think the decent signing for the Cubs is a decent average second or third guy in the rotation. And if he can do, if he can just play better and just limit his mistakes, I think it's a decent signing for the Cubs, but who knows?
Yeah. The bottom line with the Cubs with this deal was that they just desperately needed to add to their rotation because it's full of question marks. So right now their projected rotation, not factoring in Kyle Hendricks, who's recovering from a long-term injury, they have 3 starters, and it's the rest of them have been either injured or kind of lacking perform. They have Marcus Stroman, everyone knows him. Then you have Justin Steele, who is good, but not everyone knows him. And then you have guys like Adrian Sampson, who is a baseball player, and Javier Assad, who threw 30 innings last year. And
Did
then
you say Kyle Hendricks?
Kyle Hendricks is hurt. He hasn't even started a throwing program to rehab. So
what a loser.
He's not even going to – he's probably like going to be struggling to start the season, or he's also been kind of on the decline the last few seasons anyway. So their rotation is full of a lot of holes. The Cubs have very clearly found a blueprint of pitchers they like and what they're going to try to hit in their rotation. If you look at every single one of their starters, they're all more on the lower end velo-wise. They don't have anyone that throws hard. Like, I think their hardest thrower last year was like Hedbert Alzolay. That was in the rotation, and he throws like 93. Alzolay was basically it. They have a lot of guys coming back from injury, and they have a lot of young guys that kind of fill swingman roles. They have like Ethan Roberts. Adrian Sampson's not really old, but he kind of fits the same role. Javier Assad, Justin Steele does that. Alzolay does that. Alec Mills does that. So they have a lot of guys that just kind of fit one specific role, but they're a pitching and defense team. They want guys that throw the ball in the strike zone, and they want to get ground balls, and they want to get it to their infield, which if they sign a shortstop, which a lot of the signs are pointing that they desperately need to, they have a hole there. That if they sign one of the fielding shortstops, the biggest name getting linked to them right now is Dansby Swanson. If you sign Dansby Swanson, then you move Nico Horner, who is a Gold Glove level defender already at short. You have Gold Glover at short, Gold Glover at second. Then you could have someone at first like Matt Mervis or whoever you want to put there, and then hope they don't hit it to third base because that's where Patrick Wisdom plays. And his glove is made out of Swiss cheese. They want guys that throw the ball in the strike zone. They want to get ground balls, and Jameson Taillon does that. He doesn't walk anybody. I think he was tied for like either the 3rd or 4th lowest walk rate, but he was tied with like Max Fried and Justin Verlander on like walk percent. Neither of those guys ever do it. Yeah, he had the third lowest walk rate in all of baseball, tied with Justin Verlander and Max Fried. So like he fits their blueprint. You'd have to think they're going to add another starter, or at least I do, even if it's not one of the big names like Senga or whoever's left, because they just need guys to be in the rotation. Also, he's on a 4-year deal, but you know they only have long-term money tied up in Seiya Suzuki and Jameson Taillon, so they can afford to spend some money.
Yeah.
So moving on to a former Cub, the New York Mets signed also in the NL Central last year, had a pretty good stretch there for the St. Louis Cardinals. It's Jose Quintana, and they signed him to add to their rotation for 2 years, $26 million to join now 3-headed dragon led by Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander, and Jose Quintana.
I mean, I guess it's an appropriate replacement for Taijuan Walker, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's really what it is. I mean, but shout out to Quintana because he's bounced back a little bit because there was times where he just looked like, I'm like, is he going to even be employed next year? And he's bounced back a little bit. He's he has a place in this league. So 2.93 ERA last year, so he did very well.
Yeah, it's really easy to forget that he pitched so well last year. Like you said, 2.93 ERA across 165 innings. And I really like how he got to that. It's easy to forget that because he was so frustratingly mediocre across the few years after he left the south side of Chicago, pitching for the Cubs and the Giants and other teams, Angels somehow. But yeah, but last year in the NL Central, he was really good. And it's important to note, and I think it's somewhat comforting that it came with a change in how he attacked batters. He went with what my boss at Pitcher List, Nick Pollock, calls the Blake Snell blueprint, which is fastballs up, breaking stuff down. And that is usually a very common way that pitchers like to attack batters nowadays, but it's hard to execute, and when you execute it well, it can work really well, especially when you have somewhat lower fastball velocity. He averages 91, which is nothing too exciting, but he threw his fastball up. He kept his curveballs down. He stuck mostly to that 2-pitch mix and also threw in a changeup and a sinker every once in a while. But that change in the way he attacked batters really helped him excel. And I think as long as the Mets can keep him on that trajectory of using his pitches in that way, that he could still have a lot of success. I obviously think he's going to regress a little bit from the 3 ERA he had last year, probably around 3.5, maybe closer to 4, but they're really not giving up a lot of dollars to this guy. I don't think they're going to be relying on him with those 2 guys that they have at the top of the rotation. They have other guys as well, Carlos Carrasco, David Peterson. So I think he could be very underrated, but it should be pretty interesting because I think he could actually be sneakily really good again.
Good God, that rotation is old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely your Taiwan Walker replacement. Is a decent replacement for him. I mean, he fits in right into that 3rd, 4th slot. You don't have to get a lot from him because both of your pitchers will be coming from Verlander and Scherzer. But if you get a solid outing from Cortana, then it's a pretty good deal.
If according to, this is a cool tweet I found, this by Sarah Langs at Langs on Sports. If the Mets can manage to get 30 starts from each of these guys, so from Verlander, Scherzer, Quintana, and Carrasco, if they can get 30 starts from each of them, it would be 120 starts, and that would be the most by any player or by any team for pitchers 34 or older since 1900.
Wow.
And it'd be the most since 1998 when Seattle did it, or the 115. But that rotation is unfathomably old. David Peterson is the spring chicken of the group, and he's like coming into his age 28 season. Quintana will be 34, 35. He's going into his age 34 season. Verlander is already going to be going into like his age 40 season. Scherzer is going to be 38. That's an old rotation, but if they can get results, it doesn't matter how old you are.
I mean, Brett Gardner, I think, is still looking for a job. So if the Mets want to,
he works at Burger King with DD.
If we're signing old guys, go ahead and get Brett Gardner a job too, please. Thank you.
No, man, he's busy managing his shift at Burger King with DD Gregorius, so he's probably out of the question. Let's talk about some AL teams. I feel like we've only been talking about NL teams today. Martin's Boston Red Sox have added to their bullpen. Talked about that earlier when they signed Kenley Jansen to fill that closer role. Definitely need someone to do that. 2 years, $32 million for Kenley, one of the best closers in the history of baseball. Gets another chance to play for a big market team. Feels like he's just kind of like knocking them off his list. Dodgers, Braves, Red Sox.
Watch out, Yankees.
Yeah.
I mean,
the Yankees too.
Maybe next year. Maybe next year you could go.
Next year he's going to be on the Red Sox.
No opt out.
They'll trade
no
him.
opt out in this deal.
They'll trade him. Yeah,
Sure.
we'll send them Donaldson. But I think it's actually a pretty good ad. I mean, of course, like we've been saying, the Red Sox need a rotation, and now they have a clear leader in their bullpen. and you can't really just find those. So
We needed help in that bullpen. It's High Bloom. He knew that, and he got a guy, and this is a big step to help our bullpen. He's not going to save it, but he's a big a big part of that bullpen. And last year he was decent. Last year he was good last year, and now we got a good closer now. So let's see what happens. So I'm really hoping that this guy is just a good closer, and we don't have to deal with any closing problems with, because last year we had a big problem with closer, and hopefully he can solve that. Hopefully Jason can solve that.
I think he will. He was the top free agent relief pitcher left on the market. He's a guy who's always been known for having one of the best cutters in baseball. Despite the velocity falling off, I think he's improved it over the last couple of years, which has definitely improved his success. I think a lot of people thought he was falling off, and he really turned things around over the past 2 seasons. But like Davis mentioned, this is one of the best closers of all time. He's coming up on 400 saves in his career. And I think he's already in the top 10. I think he's going to be in the top 5 pretty soon for all-time saves. But it's pretty interesting. I don't think he's slowing down at all. I think he's obviously not as good as he used to be, but I think he's still going to be really good as long as the Red Sox use him correctly. Just in that closer role, he is one of those guys that does not do too well when he's not saving a ball game. But there's also the concerns about his heart health that kept him out of a couple weeks this past season. I think it was like an irregular heartbeat. He's dealt with that in the past too. It's not too serious, but anytime you have like issues with your heart, that's very scary. That's what keeps you alive. But I think this is a very good signing. It's just a guy that you can reliably put into the 9th inning every single day and not really worry about if he's going to get the job done, because I think he will. Yeah, I have lots of confidence in this. I think it's good for the Red Sox, who really struggled to find the one guy who could shut down the 9th for them the past few seasons. So it'll be dope to have him back out there. I'm glad he is staying as far away from LA as possible.
Everyone's kind of talked up how good this signing is, so I'm going to go ahead and play devil's advocate a little bit and say that I think this signing was in a vacuum fine. In regards to another move that was made the literal same day, not good. So over last season, Kenley Jansen posted 1.1 WAR, posted a 3.38 ERA and a 3.21 FIP over 64 innings. Do you know who that is insanely similar to, Jake, right off the top of your head?
Right off the top of my head, a lot of guys. I have no idea.
One is almost
Zach Eflin.
One is almost identical, and it's Joe Jimenez, who was just traded by the Detroit Tigers. The Braves today got him to replace Kenley in their bullpen, and they gave up Justin Henry Malloy and Jake Higginbottom. Neither of those guys are in the top 200 prospects, and they got him. Joe Jimenez last year threw 57 innings. He had 1.4 WAR. He had a 3.49 ERA, which is very negligible, but he had a 2 flat FIP. Similar K percent, everything. Kenley Jansen walked more than Jimenez. Jimenez is a free agent after this year, but he's also 27, I believe. He's 27. He's going into his age 28 season. So Kenley Jansen gets paid $32 million. Braves get a guy for a year that basically does the exact same thing that cost them 2 guys that will likely never really play baseball for them. I think the Red Sox, they got their guy, but I think they overpaid. Kenley Jansen is obviously still good, but I mean, he's been wavering a little bit in the last few years. So I don't know. If I were the Red Sox, I would have kicked the tires on that trade. But
maybe it's time to bring Craig Kimbrell in too, and bring him back, bring Batman back to Boston. And by the way, I do want to see. I haven't seen no interest. I have him going back to Atlanta. That's a side note. But anyway.
Neither of those. So the problem with that is Craig Kimbrell, if he's not closing, sucks, and Kenley Jansen, if he's not closing, sucks. So you're already consigning yourself to one of those guys is going to suck if they can't close.
So you figured out my plan.
Oh yeah, well there you go. Yankees fan plan to rebuild the Red Sox. Trade Mookie Betts. Oh man, they already did that.
Yes, let Bogarts walk.
Another big move to talk about regarding the Oakland Athletics. This one I'm pretty sure is going to be their top paid player. The Athletics signed Aledmus Diaz to play shortstop for them. A 2-year deal worth $14.5 million. Jake, what's it going to be like to watch the Oakland Athletics this year hitting 3 and 4? Jace Peterson, Aledmus Diaz.
Oh, come on, man. They got other guys on the team.
Not after they traded Sean Murphy.
Yeah, let's hope not. Actually, I don't know. Give Shea Langoliers a chance. Yeah, Aledmus Diaz is not the most inspiring player. He's obviously just a straight up utility guy that's going to be used every single day, very similarly to somebody that we already talked about in Jace Peterson. This guy's just a right-handed hitter. He's literally same exact, just average hitter as Peterson. He doesn't walk a lot, but he doesn't strike out a lot. He's not a great fielder. I think he's just a very, very average guy. I'm not super excited about this deal at all, especially I think Diaz got a lot of bad press after leaning into that pitch during the World Series too. So it sort of like gives him a bad look after years of going under the radar. He looked really promising in 2016 as a rookie with the Cardinals. He batted 300 with 17 dingers for around 3 F4. And since then, he hasn't been worth more than 1.5 WAR in a single season. And that's not just because he doesn't play every day. It's really a mediocre signing. It's really nothing to get excited about. He won't play shortstop. He'll likely play second base and all over the field. I think Nick Allen at shortstop is really good. He's a really good fielder. Doesn't hit at all, but I'm not too excited about this. I think I might be more excited about Jace Peterson. The only difference is, they're like the same age too. I think I'm more excited about Jace Peterson, but Aledmus Diaz is just going to be, I don't know, they're going to be yin and yang out there. They're going to be killing it on the worst team in baseball.
Same guy, different day.
Yeah.
I retweet what he said.
At least the A's are spending money, Jake. What do you have to complain about?
I don't know, bro. Yeah. I could afford that contract.
It honestly, yeah, you live in California. This guy's rich. He lives in California. Aledmus Diaz and Jace Peterson hitting 3 and 4 would probably weirdly be an upgrade over last year's lineup for the A's. But it honestly feels like it feels like the A's are spending money to say that they spent money so that people will leave them alone.
Yeah, but that team's just not going to be that good next season.
Yeah, they're going to suck.
That's an understatement.
They're going to suck real bad.
Yeah, they are.
You still got Ramon.
I mean,
for now.
How long will it take until they have to be good? And maybe they'll just suck until they move to Vegas or something.
No, take that back. I do not say that. That's the only team I can afford to go see.
I mean, am
I
wrong?
Pay you to go to those games?
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. But if you're gonna speak it into existence,
hey, listen.
They pay for you to go to the Athletics games.
They've done a free game before. They've had a free game before.
They have great uniforms.
That's honestly sad, Jake.
The uniforms are great.
They made more money that day than they do when they make people pay to go to the ballpark because of concessions.
I bet they did. They should do that for every game.
It was overflowing with people. I've never seen that many people at the stadium. It was sick.
They should do that every game.
Exactly. They should do that for most stadiums. Should be like that.
Yeah,
freaking Pirates games, Rays games.
That's bad. Just do it for free and just have people come in.
Everybody will show up, and then they just $10 beers because people are getting free entrance, so they're like, might as well. I have all this money that I didn't spend on the ticket.
It's like what casinos do, right? They give you a cheap hotel ticket because they know you're going to spend the money anyway. So there you go.
All right. I don't really want to talk about this next one, so I'm going to skip it. And
I'm ready for this one. I circled that one.
The St. Louis Cardinals signed Wilson Contreras. Former Cub, Wilson Contreras. Never heard of her. 5 years, $87.5 million EDs for Big Willie, who Jed decided not to trade. And then he gets to watch him leave for the Cardinals, which is already gay. Excuse me, that's ridiculous. Which is already whack.
Thank you.
And $87.5 million is very cheap. depending on what Wilson Contreras you get. If you get Wilson Contreras where he just throws 3 of the worst Javier Baez-esque swings you can possibly see, then great. If you get Wilson Contreras for like the 2 months out of the year, he tears the cover off of a baseball, I hate my life. But yeah, they found their successor to Yachty. Hopefully he does well and the Cardinals never make the playoffs again.
Man, yeah, no, I feel it. Like, why did the Knicks, like when with the Mitchell Robinson thing, like that? I feel you. That's, but it's okay. It's okay. It's he's not gonna hurt you over there. I think. Yeah, they got the new Yachty. That's it. They got the new Yachty. I'm not gonna say much else. But it's a pretty good bargain for the Cardinals if you look at it. You got Nolan Arenado. Still got Goldie, and now you add Contreras to the mix. It's you say goodbye to one of the best catchers of our generation and say hello.
I wouldn't really say that, but
one of them.
I mean, Wilson Contreras is a good baseball player, but calling him one of the best catchers of the generation is like a stretch. Like
no. I'm talking about Yachty. Mr. Yachty.
Oh no, he sucked too. Yeah. So. He sucked too. Up until last year, he had lower career WAR than Jason Kendall, so he's not good.
I'm pretty excited to see Wilson out there. Obviously, it's disappointing to see him leave the Cubs, but I think the Cardinals are a really just like solid franchise, and I think he's going to be really good out there. I think I don't want to say he's underrated. I think in some ways he's pretty overrated in terms of catching, but to get any sort of offense out of your catcher is something that's hard to find. And I think the fact that Wilson Contreras is an above average hitter while he's playing catcher basically every day is really important. And I think the Cardinals are going to be that much better, that they finally got rid of Yachty. I disagree with Davis. I think Yachty's really good. I don't think he's been good for a while, though. I think it's been a few years since he was any good at all. And so, like, getting him out of there, having him retire, you don't have to be like, oh, we don't want you on the team anymore. He decided to leave. Now you can actually get a real big upgrade there. And the Cardinals have been really good the past couple of years that I think this might be a really underrated signing that makes them a lot better, like exponentially better. We'll see how it goes with the pitching staff, though, because we always know Yachty is more known for his defensive prowess than offensive.
The big thing for Wilson Contreras that honestly like determines whether or not his value is like through the roof is if they introduce the automatic strike zone in his career, because his big deal is he has a great arm, but he's an awful receiver. He's just not a good receiver. He's definitely not good at framing. He's gotten better, and his framing metrics have improved, but he's genuinely never been good at that. If they introduce the automatic strike zone, he's like he's everything you want because he's a good offensive catcher, and mainly a lot of his value comes in that he'll basically, if you pencil him into your lineup like pretty much every day, he'll almost guarantee you 20 home runs. He walks at a pretty good clip for a catcher. He never really hits for a high average, but average is an overrated stat anyway. That's his big deal. So I think that's what you can really, really bank on Wilson Contreras. The contract they gave him, I kind of expected it to be more along the lines of $100 million to like around a 6-year mark, which isn't too far off, but still. I knew this would happen, and I knew the Cubs were not going to re-sign Wilson Contreras. My biggest thought was going to be that he'd sign with the Astros, not the Cardinals. Which sucks because I have to watch him play for the baseball franchise I hate either the most or the second most. And I really don't like that. So it is what it is. Just sucks. Hopefully, like I said, he'll be awesome for the Cardinals and they go 70 and 92 for the next 30 years would be awesome.
Wow, you're being generous today, huh?
Yeah, no, because then they're bad enough that they still won't have the best odds in the lottery, so they'll still get hosed in the lottery, which we'll talk about in a minute. They get hosed in the lottery and they'll be bad. So like that's everything.
Yeah,
just be awful forever.
Also, this is your Yachty Molina question right here, and I like the move for St. Louis. You lose one of the best catchers they ever played. Yachty, and you get in for the Contreras. And also, it's a good move for both sides because both the Contreras is a good catcher, and St. Louis needed to get Yachty replacement, and they got him.
Yadier Molina is a terrible baseball player. He
always
always was a terrible baseball player. And he will always forever be a terrible baseball player. Overrated neck tattoo merchant.
We'll let him know.
On to the next.
You there. I'm just gonna let you.
On to the next trade. We'll eventually, when we're doing this podcast 5 years from now, when Yadier Molina comes up to be on the ballot, I'll go on a 10 to 12 minute tirade about how garbage Yadier Molina is.
And then he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Probably. And then I'm gonna go pick it outside Cooperstown. On to the next trade. The Rays traded Brooks Raley to the New York Mets in exchange for I don't know if you saw the funny meme Foolish Baseball posted, Jake, but they posted Keyshawn. The player that they received in this trade is named Keyshawn Askew, and they posted a picture. He posted a picture of Keyshawn Johnson, former Jets wide receiver, and the picture was just a little bit tilted in the frame. I really like that. But Brooks Raley, good baseball player, kind of a terrible person.
Was he part of that?
Yes, he was.
I guess it was the whole bullpen.
Yeah, it was pretty much the whole bullpen. If you don't know what we're talking about, Brooks Raley is like Brooks Raley, Jason Adams, Jalen Beeks, and like one other guy.
Nick Anderson.
Nick Anderson in the Rays bullpen when they did the Pride Day. They ripped the LGBT patch off their jersey before they went to pitch. So, Brooks Raley was part of that, but now he's on Mets bullpen, so he can be homophobe in a new state now.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because I was just about to praise him for how good of a pitcher he was. Because I obviously don't like him as a person, and
he's good. No, he's a great pitcher.
Yeah, no. It's hard to talk. Yeah, it's hard to talk positively about a guy like that. It's like talking positively about Aroldis Chapman. This is obviously not as bad as that, but it's also still it's in its own league. I think it'd be fine if he did steroids, but social issues like this are a different thing for me. Nonetheless, sticking to baseball, I think Brooks Raley was really underrated in 2021 when he pitched to a 4.78 ERA with the Astros. If you look at all his underlying metrics, he was much better. And this year, last 2022, it all played out with the Rays. He was really good. Not only is he able to pitch often, like he's able to get in there and pitch every single day pretty much as a reliever, but also he produces really great numbers. Sub 3 ERA this past year, 2.68. And I think it's a really good trade for the Mets. I think it was interesting to see the deal that he got in the first place when he signed with the Rays last year. It was interesting to see him get as much money as he did. And now he's going to be on a team that could really use him. I think the Mets were definitely lacking in the bullpen after Trevor May and Seth Lugo hit free agency this year, especially with Edwin Diaz. They got Diaz back, and now they got Raley. So they're sort of solidifying that bullpen, especially with some other guys that they've gotten so far in the offseason. But I'm really interested to see how well Brooks Raley fits in there. It's disappointing that he won't be getting saves on the Rays as a fantasy manager. But outside of that, I think he's really good. And for Keyshawn Askew, not much on him. He's 22 years old. He's played only up to high A ball. He seems like a guy that can strike out a lot of guys. It's hard to tell if he's a swingman or a reliever right now, but he's been striking out around like 34% of batters last year at regular and high A. And he's a lefty that's 6'4". But so I'm sure the Rays will turn him into the next Shane McClanahan.
That would be nice. That would be nice for a little bit of like, this is who we traded you for. And yeah, I'm not gonna say much about that. So
I really like the Keyshawn Askew picture. I'll have to find it. Any thoughts on this one, Martin? Are you ready to talk about your new signing?
Let's get the new sign.
Awesome. So the Red Sox have signed former Oryx Buffalo in the NPB, Masataka Yoshida to a 5-year, $90 million contract. This is a record for an NPB position player. This is breaks last season's Cubs signing of Seiya Suzuki. Yoshida he's just a really good hitter. He hits for high average. He hits for a little bit of power, and he absolutely refuses to strike out. Loves to walk. So last year, I think he posted what was it, 41 strikeouts to 80 walks and or something like that, Jake?
Yeah, double
Unreal.
the amount of walks as strikeouts.
Unreal. But yeah, also one more thing it's important to note about the contract is it's 5 years, $90 million, but also the Red Sox have to pay the posting fee, which is in the realm of, I think it's right around $15 million for Yoshida. So the total cost of the deal is more around $105 million instead of the 90 that I said.
I actually really like this too because I don't really know a lot about this guy, but I was reading and doing the research, and this guy, I'm excited because this guy does not take a lot of strikeouts. He walks a lot. He's a good average. He's a good hitter, and we need someone like that on this team because this team needs it because she needs it, and we are. She needs it, and we just, we need it, and we are going to be a good team this year. And honestly, with the signing, I feel it's gonna pan out.
I totally agree. I'm super excited, honestly, to see how his skills transfer over here. As I've already said this podcast, I'm a sucker for walk to strikeout ratio. This guy had Juan Soto-esque plate discipline metrics in Japan. He walks less, but he strikes out a lot less. I think he struck out about as much as like Luis Arias did last year, but then also walked a lot more. He's a guy that's batted .326 throughout his career in MPB, in foreign baseball, which is pretty incredible. And then outside of that, it's not just that. He's not a speed guy either, which is interesting. So he's got a really good eye. He puts the bat on the ball. Bats over 300, well over 300. But then he can also hit for power. He's hit 21 home runs in 2022, hit 21 home runs in 2021, and he hit 29 in 2019, 26 the year before that. This is a guy that can really provide some power. I think he's going to be similar to Alex Verdugo, but with a lot better plate discipline. I think he's going to walk a lot more than Verdugo did, but never strike out, hit for a pretty solid average. He's probably going to be more like 290 range in MLB, but I think it'll be interesting to see how that power plays. I think that's the biggest question mark for him, because if you look at the rest of his profile, it seems as though he's like a contact oriented guy, but if he can be a guy that can hit the ball out of the park as well and be like 15 home runs, maybe 15 to 20, probably land closer to 15 with a 300 average and just incredible plate discipline, I think is really underrated. I don't know anything about his glove. I don't know if he's a corner outfielder, a center fielder, but it'll be really interesting. This is a guy I'm going to be targeting in fantasy drafts all over the place, especially in points leagues because of that plate discipline.
Absolutely. Masataka Yoshida also, I don't know if you've seen the clip of him absolutely destroy a walk-off home run in the Nippon series where his Oryx Buffaloes won. Yeah, he's got some power. I think what is a really nice looking swing. It's honestly kind of Griffey-esque, as weird as that sounds. He never strikes out, but he also feels the need, kind of a prototypical new leadoff hitter in the modern MLB. Just doesn't strike out. He gets on base. He hits for a little bit of power now as well. I think the best case scenario you can hope for if you're a Red Sox fan is this guy could be Japanese JD Drew.
Hopefully.
And yeah, I think that's probably a really good comp for him.
Holy
I think
moly! I just watched that home run. That was
he
third deck.
Annihilated it. They won that series too, so he's leaving on a high note. Oryx Buffaloes won. But yeah, I really think his the upper level of his ceiling probably fits as JD Drew.
Right.
He probably is not going to strike out, just 40 times and walk 80 in Major League Baseball because of the adjustment period and the adjustment to pitching. Everyone calls Japan kind of like quadruple A at the level of baseball there. So it's going to be a bit of a step up. Seiya Suzuki last year struggled a little bit at times as well, but he has an awesome swing. He walks a ton. This is a really good sign for the Red Sox, who tend to have a really good track record with a lot of their international signings.
Yeah. You mentioned JD Drew. He even has a similar stance.
Yeah, that's a great call. Honestly, I just looked at JD Drew's stats.
I was just watching him. But, can the Red Sox, well, I say this as I'm taking my Yankee hat off for a second. And I'm going to
looks like it's still on.
Yeah, let me just take it off for a second, okay? Can the Red Sox stop getting in their own way? Like, look at the guys that they have let go in the past few years. And if, you were adding this man to your equation right now, you would be looking I would be scared. But it's like you take it away and bring it again. And, you still got Devers and you still have who else is there? You still got, Vertigo and Trevor Story. Tristan Casas, I don't know. I mean, from the games that we played against him, he looks like he has potential, but I don't know. It's a nice signing. I think he'll do pretty well. But, man, if you kept some of the guys that you let go, you would be feeling really good right now. But yeah, and by the way, the value I think is very good though. For the upside, 5 years, even when you take into account what they had to pay, $105 million, and you look at the rest of the contracts going around the league, it's a nice replacement, and hopefully he fills the void that now JD Martinez is going to leave behind. So.
Yeah, over the past 3 seasons in the NPB. Over 1,467 plate appearances, he has struck out 97 times.
Wow. I mean,
that's about 6.5%. A little bit.
2-time batting champ, right? So, I mean, hey,
it's just stupid stats. Moving on, I already talked about it a little bit, but the Tigers trade reliever Joe Jimenez to the Atlanta Braves in exchange for prospects Justin Henry Malloy and Jake Higginbottom. Like I said earlier, I mean, his stats were comparable to Kenley Jansen. He's got 1 year of control, so he's going to be a free agent after the year. But the Braves gave up nothing for him. They basically just stole a reliever from the Tigers that will likely be really good for them.
The Braves are straight criminals, I swear. Everything.
Yeah, I don't know what their deal is. But
the fact that they got him, that alone makes me want to target him in my fantasy leagues. I don't know if he's going to get saves or not, but they just know what they're doing as a franchise altogether. So.
Yeah, I love Joe Jimenez last year. This has been a guy who had a lot of potential when he debuted back in 2017. He didn't pitch too well, but he always showed a lot of potential. He seemed like the closer in waiting in Detroit, but never really realized that potential until this last year. He was really good. He had a 2.70 xFIP to go along with a 2 FIP and a 3.49 ERA. He struck out more batters than he has in the entirety of his career outside of a 60 inning sample in 2019. He was up at 33%, which is the best rate of his career. And I think he's a really interesting guy. I think it seems like he's finally got things figured out. It was always a walk problem. He had the lowest walk rate of his career this past year. So I think he's really going to fit in well, especially in a bullpen that doesn't need to rely on him at all, with Raisel Iglesias closing out games and AJ Minter setting up alongside Colin McHugh and Kirby Yates, Nick Anderson, and other guys. I think it's going to be a great fit. I think Joe Jimenez is really good. The prospects are somewhat interesting. Justin Henry Malloy seems to be the most interesting of the two. He's still only 22. He's going to be 23 next year. He's a third base / outfielder. He reached as high as AAA last year. He seems to be a guy that has a pretty good eye. He walks a crazy amount. Last year at AA, he walked 18% of the time and struck out 25% of the time. So maybe he needs to be a little bit more aggressive. But the Tigers may get somebody interesting there. Not totally sure about that. It's still too early to tell. And same with Jake Higginbottom. He's a 26-year-old pitcher that hasn't pitched above AA. So I don't know about that one. But Joe Jimenez was set to be a free agent after this season. So I guess capitalize on him while he has the most amount of control left on his contract.
Yeah, I still really like this move for for the Tigers. I mean, I like it a little bit for the Tigers, and I like it a lot more for the Braves. Justin Malloy's interesting. Like, he's got a lot of power. He had 22 home runs. So I think he's basically been playing the minors for a year. But Joe Jimenez is going to come in, and he's probably going to fill a need in the back end of the bullpen. But they lose Kenley Jansen, and guess who they just bump up to closer because they don't need to find another one for that now because they just stole Raisel Iglesias last year, remember? They've got a year of Raisel to be the closer, and now they have Joe Jimenez to fill that role. Justin Henry Malloy, he hits for some powers. I think he's like a corner outfielder kind of guy. But the issue with him is he has almost all of his power to the pull side and none to opposite field. Like, he basically has hit every single one of his extra base hits and all of his home runs to the pull side. He's a right-handed hitter. So, yeah, kind of a weird prospect there, but he could be good. I just like this move for the Braves. It feels like they just constantly pull off moves like this where they get so much better without really losing anything.
Yeah, pretty eventful winter meetings. It hasn't really been that way for the past few years. Like, we'd get a few signings and stuff, but we always expected it to be crazy because you got everybody in the same place. And this year finally lived up to the hype. We got most of the big free agents signed, and it took us 2.5 hours to get through it all. But the rest of the offseason will be a little bit slower, so we'll have other things to talk about. But it's nice to have all this information to talk about.
Out of the way.
It's a very exciting time of the year. Before we wrap things up, I'm going to run down how the MLB draft lottery went. I think they did the top 18 picks with the draft lottery. It came out to be pretty disappointing. We'll try not to stick on it for more than a couple minutes, but I'll run down it. The Pirates got the number 1 pick, Nationals number 2, Tigers 3, Rangers 4, Twins with the 5th pick. The A's got the 6th pick. The Reds got the 7th pick. Royals 8th. Rockies 9th. And the Marlins round out the top 10. The Angels, D-backs, Cubs, Red Sox, and White Sox are the next 5 picks. And the last 3 in the top 18 were the Giants, Orioles, and Brewers. My one note to say about this is that the A's had the 2nd worst record in baseball, and they ended up with the 6th pick. So it seems like the draft lottery's working. But yeah, it's pretty disappointing. Pretty disappointing. Also, the Pirates got the number 1 pick. They had the same record as the Reds, who got the 7th pick. So I don't know. I think we're rewarding the wrong team here. The Pirates are one of those teams that really need to pick up the pace on the rebuild.
Yeah. I don't know how crazy I am about the lottery. I get why it's there to try to dissuade the tanking, but also you have teams that are perpetually just bad, and now you're just stretching it out. Like Jake said, don't reward the Pirates for being garbage. Like, it's past time that the Pirates should not be garbage anymore. There's teams on here like the Tigers. The Tigers have been garbage forever. The Rockies got stuck with the 9th because they can't even tank right.
I don't think they're trying to tank.
Are you sure?
They're on the upscale.
They just signed Chris Bryant, brother.
Yeah, he didn't play baseball last year.
Yeah, Randall.
He played for like 3 weeks and then left. He's like, I got hurt. I'm done.
I don't think that was part of the plan.
Yeah, grit you. Randall get you.
Does anything ever go to plan for the Rockies, Jake?
Exactly.
Usually never does.
He played 40 games. He's good in 40 games. Shout out to Chris Bryant.
It's like,
man.
It's like, yeah, in concept, I get what they're trying to do with the lottery, but I don't think it works in baseball. I don't think it's not like you're gonna draft, Victor Wembanyama next year, and he's gonna debut the same year, and he's gonna turn the franchise around. I don't think it really works. I like the idea of what we're trying to do, but it's like you said, this isn't it. This is not it. So.
All right. Well, if nobody else has any final thoughts, I think we'll wrap it up with the closer. All right. Where's my banner? There we go. All right. So to wrap up the podcast, we always bring in a closer to close out our podcast. We run down the career of one of the top closers of all time. I usually like to pick a guy with at least 100 saves, and that's where we are going today with a guy that Davis should know pretty well.
I love
Carlos Marmol. Do you? Well,
yeah,
here we go. Carlos Marmol. Go ahead.
He is the train wreck of all closers.
Carlos Marmol had a 9-year career from 2006 to 2014 with the Cubs, Dodgers, and Marlins. He debuted in June of 2006 versus the dreaded rival Cardinals, during which he tossed a couple of innings, allowing only 1 hit, no earned runs, no walks, and striking out 3. He started 13 of 19 games during his rookie year on his way to a 6.08 ERA. Nice. They were like, let's put that guy in the bullpen. And so he became exclusively a reliever in 2007, and he pitched exceptionally in a setup role across 69 in the third innings pitched. Nice 1.43 ERA, which was the best of his career in just the second season of his career, first year in the bullpen. And he had his first career save that year as well. It was the third best ERA. That 1.43 mark was the third best ERA in all of the majors, and that got him 1 10th place vote in NL MVP voting, placing him 26th in the voting. In 2008, Kerry Wood took over the closer role, keeping Marmol as the setup guy. Marmol tossed 87 in the third innings with a 2.68 ERA, a career best 0.93 whip, and 7 saves. And he even replaced Kerry Wood in the All-Star game as the Cubs All-Star representative that year to earn his first and only All-Star appearance. The next season, they said, sorry, Carlos, we're going with Kevin Gregg. Kevin Gregg was the closer in 2009, once again leaving Marmol to set up duties. He took over the closer role, however, in August when Gregg was struggling to giving up home runs, but Marmol wasn't really that much better. He was just walking the world, hitting everybody. He was not a guy known for his control. He tossed 74 innings that year with a 3.41 ERA and 15 saves. In 2010, he finally took over the closing duties full time. He tossed 77 and 2/3 innings that year with a 2.55 ERA and a career best 38 saves, and he led the majors in 70 games finished. And Marmol also recorded 16 strikeouts per 9 that year, breaking the previous record of 14.9 strikeouts per 9 held by Eric Gagne, which is pretty incredible. This is a guy who really was all about getting swings and misses out of the zone. And people started to learn that they don't have to swing if the ball is out of the zone. He's tied for the major league lead in blown saves in a rough 2011, during which he pitched to a 4.01 ERA across 74 innings, but he still locked down 34 saves, which is pretty good. And 2012 was the last year of his full-time closing duty. So he had a 3-year run of being the closer, 3.5 just about. 2012, he had a 3.42 ERA across 55 and a third innings pitched and just 20 saves. He was DFA'd by the Cubs in June of the 2013 season, during which he had a 5.86 ERA for the team. He was traded to the Dodgers in July, and the Dodgers, of course, got the best out of him. He pitched to a 2.53 ERA across 21 innings. He signed with the Marlins in the next offseason prior to the 2014 campaign and was absolutely awful, pitching to an 8.10 ERA, and he was DFA'd as early as May of that year and then would never pitch again in the majors. So it was a pretty short-lived closing career for Marmol. He had a really impressive peak. I remember when he was one of the best closers in baseball, and it went downhill incredibly fast. I think they didn't get him into the closer role fast enough, but that rounded out his career with a 9.8 baseball reference WAR across 577 innings pitched to go with 744 strikeouts. He finished with a 3.57 ERA, a very fitting 1.35 whip, and 117 saves, which ties him for 133rd all-time on the all-time saves leaderboard with the boy BJ Ryan, who will one day close out our podcast.
Important more notes about Carlos Marmol because I love him.
Yes, please.
So he was probably the Cubs' best reliever from all of 2017, or not 2017, all of 2007 to 2010. He's also the franchise leader in hits per 9 and strikeouts per 9. So he's the franchise leader for the Cubs for that. He's also got the second most games appeared in ever behind Charlie Root, which is 483. So he is second in Cubs appearances for pitchers. And he's also third all-time for Cubs saves. Also, if you want to know a really cool extra fact about him, he was also part of one of the days that completely changed the Cubs' direction. On July 2nd, 2013, they traded him to the Dodgers for Matt Guerrier, and then they also signed Gleyber Torres that day. They also acquired my favorite ever baseball player, Jake Arrieta, and Pedro Strop in the same day. So 24 hours, Carlos Marmol was part of the complete reshaping of the Cubs. But yeah, I love Carlos Marmol. He was the human heart attack of a closer, because he just blew. He'd have a day where he'd strike out everybody, and it wouldn't even be remotely hittable, and then he would be an absolute train wreck the next day. I love Carlos Marmol.
And you know what won't show up in the record books? Carlos Marmol was an MLB 08 The Show legend for me. I remember using him all the time. I don't know why, but yeah, that's what. Oddly enough, that's probably what I remember him the most for. But that's a good thing. He's a 12-year-old me. So
this was my favorite bringing the closer of all time.
All right. There's been a lot of them, so I'm glad they're getting better.
They're always great. There's no getting better. They're always perfect. But today was even more perfect because it's Carlos Marmol.
Yes, you're right. Does anybody have any final notes? Isaiah or Martin, Davis and I get to talk a lot.
Well, this was a great week. I'll be looking forward to next season. Maybe we get a watch party going for the first game. Yankees and Giants.
Are they really facing each other?
They are opening day. That's why I was like, imagine. That's why I said that could have been the darkest day in Yankees history. But yeah, so it's been a great week. It was a great show. And,
good to have you back.
Yes, and bringing the
welcome anytime. Thank you.
I'll be here. Yeah. What's up, Martin? What did you think, Martin?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
That's what we shoot for here on Free Baseball. Pretty good. So if you want to catch us next time for episode number 40, milestone feels like, check back with us next Wednesday. Wednesday is probably going to be our day going forward. You want to plug your socials, Isaiah? We always plug me and Jake.
Yeah, I think I'm right there. Isaiah 2896 at the bottom. Check me out. I was you'll casually catch me ranting or panicking on Twitter as I was the past few days. So
What about you, Martin? Got any socials to plug? Anything to plug?
I'm good.
All right.
Yeah, we're good. We're pretty good. We're good. We're great.
Awesome.
You write for you put articles up on Athletes Hub, right?
Yeah.
Dope. All right. Well, you can find all of us there.
One of the OGs. So
yeah, you can find all of us at theathleteshub.org, and you can follow the Athletes Hub on Twitter at athleteshub. You can follow me on Twitter at DVSberg because my name's already on the screen, and you can follow Jake Crumpler at Jake Crumpler. Super easy. As always, plug all of Jake's stuff, read all of Jake's stuff on all the sites he writes for, which is pitcherlist.com and Baseball HQ. And I almost said Baseball Prospectus, and I'm like, that's not it.
That would be cool.
That would be cool. Baseball Prospectus. Hook Jake up. But yeah, that's all we got for today. Thanks for hanging out.
Hey, guys.
Next show might not be almost 3 hours, Pools.
Let's hope not.
We'll
it's
do a
like
5 hour
12
one
o'clock
of these
for
days.
you guys. I'm about to have dinner.
We'll see you guys later.
Yeah.